right. We are live. Let me just get a few things edited and we will begin. Just give a couple minutes for people to come in. While we're waiting for that, let me go ahead and make some quick edit updates real quick. Hold on. All right. Oops, let's do this like that. Hold on. Okay. Make sure that's muted. Let me just edit a few things and we'll get going. All right. Just gonna give it a minute or two, then I'll do some quick announcements, and then we'll get into our topic. I know it's been a couple weeks. Got some stuff to us to build. All right. What's going on here? All right. All right. What happened? It disappeared. Oh, there we go. I think that's good there on that end. All right. Just hang tight for a couple moments. Bam. Today's date. All right, there we go. I think we are good. Vacation. Save. Getting good at this. Do it so much, start to become good. All right. Got the editing out the way. Want to welcome everybody to the show. Going to give it a minute or two as we get some people trickling in. As you know, I do this not like back in the day where I used to sometimes put out a notification. I don't know when I'm able to do it anymore. So I just do it when I get a chance to do it. I've been trying to get on here every week, every other week. I just don't know exactly when. So always look at your notifications. One thing I can say, usually it's a Thursday or a Friday. I can't say that. So always be alert. Pretty much for the most part on a Thursday or a Friday it's kind of a good time for me to come on. Again, I just don't know where, when, and with the schedule and all that. It's a little hard for me to figure that out. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. That doesn't matter. Real quick, run through some quick announcements seems like I say this every YouTube, how quick the weeks, the days, and the months go. September, for the most part, we're pretty much approaching the final week in September, which leads us to next month, October, which is I want to put that out there first in the announcements, the 5th annual Journey of the Black Adept Conference. It's upon us already. Unbelievable. It feels like, in my estimation, it feels like we didn't do the last one not too long ago. So anyway, it's here. We do already have people registering, signing up. So I would encourage people to start doing that as soon as you can. I know like last year, October is when it really kicked up. and people started signing up. There are still spots, plenty of spots. Well, I don't want to say plenty of spots, but there's still a good amount of spots. But I know that will start to fade over the next couple of weeks. So if you are planning to come, it is October 27th to the 30th. October 27th, Thursday, that night at 8 p.m. It's a meet and greet like we did last year. We'll just meet at the location that'll be on the itinerary, and everybody knows what a meet and greet is. Everybody can meet each other, get that out of the way. A little socializing, a little food. This way, the next day we can get right into our program rather than not stumble and waste too much time on that. And the meet and greet's always fun. And then Friday and Saturday have a pretty much a similar itinerary as far as time frame. So on Friday and Saturday from 9 to about 4 p.m., we'll have different classes, workshops, presentations. We will convene after 4 p.m. and return about 7:30-ish, 7:38 roughly, give or take. And on both of those nights, we will do a group ritual. We already have some good stuff planned. You got to have to be there to find out what we have wonderfully planned for Friday night. I think that's going to be very interesting, and I'm kind of excited to see how that all pans out. And then after both nights, at the end of the work, we have a group dinner for those that want to stay and attend. We do that on Friday and Saturday. And then Sunday, we close the event out from noon to 4 p.m. with a open question and answer discussion forum, pretty much about anything you want to discuss on the occult left-hand path, and especially about what transpired during the conference. If you have any questions or anything you want to build on or discuss in reference to that. So it's a great 4-day event. If you want information on how to attend in person or virtually, you can attend it virtually. Virtually gives you access to the classes, workshops, on all 3 days. Doesn't give you access to the rituals. It's too much to record and bring people in feed. It's too much. It's not like just doing it on Patreon in a private setting where it could be focused on that. There's just too much going on during the ritual with that many people there. But if you want to attend virtually and get access to all the classes and the workshops for all 3 days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, you can also do that. So if you're interested in registering for the conference, shoot me an email, and please put that in the title of the email so it stands out, because there's so many emails that go to the email address. Just put Black Adept Conference 5 or title it something in regards to that so it stands out and I see it. And just put in an email if you want to come live or if you want to attend virtually. There will be a cutoff for live spots. We're still good at the moment, but I know that's going to change pretty drastically in the next week or two. So shoot me an email in regards to that if you are interested in a spiritual reading. I offer a variety of different readings, clepothic demonic readings, shadow work readings, as I say all the time, which is an awesome place or a great place to start. If you're trying to figure out what direction to go in, if you're trying to figure out what kind of ritual work you should be doing, or if you're just not sure where to begin, it's always great to uncover the shadow and the hidden self and find out what things you need to work on. Okay. Also offer Santa Muerte and Spirit of the Dead readings, Egyptian oracle readings, readings to see what deity or spirits walk with you, which is a good tool to help you understand yourself, and a list of others. So if you're interested in a spiritual reading or a spiritual consultation, shoot me an email. Pretty much everything I'm saying is going across the ticker on the bottom of the screen. You can reach me at that email to inquire about that. KHNUM19@gmail.com. And again, if to start the process, to save time, if you really want to book one right out the gate, a reading or a consultation, just be clear on the days and times you're available and the time zone that you live in. That's very important in order to match time. Also, I encourage everybody to check out the Patreon page, which gives you access to the private monthly classes I do. That's 3 monthly classes and a monthly ritual. I encourage you to join Tier 3. That gives you access to all of that. The classes are available individually, but those classes individually are $56 a month. $56 for one class, where Tier 3 is $25 a month and gives you access to 3. It's a no-brainer. So it's something I would encourage people to check out. Tier 3, patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. And when you do join, you get access to all the previous content from when the channel began. You get access to all the current ongoing classes, and then obviously for those classes in the future moving forward. Now, it's always encouraged if you can attend the classes live on Patreon because it's a better experience. But obviously, we know based on everybody's different situations in life, work schedules or whatever, not everybody has the ability to do that. So everything is archived because I get that question all the time. I can't be there live. Am I still going to be able to do the work? Sure, you can. Everything is archived. You can work in between at periods where you may not be able to get there live, and that's okay. So you can obviously do that in your own time. Everything is archived, but always encouraged to get there live. It's a better experience. And this way you can interact with others. So again, I encourage you guys to check that out. Patreon.com/Baniti. This month's Patreon events are winding down. Next Friday finalizes September events. We are doing the ritual of the wisdom of Tahuti. Which is going to be a ritual a bit different from what we've done, quite different from what we've done. It's kind of flipping the script. That ritual is only for Patreon members only. If you would like to participate in that ritual, you need to be a Patreon Tier 3 member. Rituals, that's the only way you can participate in the rituals. I don't open that up publicly. But again, when you join the page, you have access to all the previous rituals. And we've done a lot in the last couple of years. You'll see all the stuff there that's archived. Those that are members of the page see I'm constantly putting material up on there. So what we're doing here publicly and in addition to what's on Patreon, believe me, it's tons of stuff. You're not going to, and I say this out of confidence, not arrogance. I don't think you're going to get that type of material anywhere else for what I'm doing it for. So check it out, patreon.com/Baniti. Baniti. Don't forget here on YouTube to hit the like buttons. The more likes the channel gets, the more it expands out to other venues and reaches more people. So make sure you hit the likes, get the likes up, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell. Make sure you hit all notifications because if you don't, you will not get all notifications. But when you make sure that bell is checked and all notifications, and anytime we go live or upload something, you'll get a notification. So we are live right now on Primordial Chaos on Facebook. That's 2 words, Primordial Chaos Facebook, and on Instagram, 1 word, Primordial Chaos 9. So we welcome all those people that are watching on all 3 platforms, and you should have access to type in when need be, where I have it all streaming here on 1 platform from StreamYard, which has been great since I've been using it. It's less work, easier to set up, don't have to use multiple devices, very convenient. So it's been a great thing. All right. That's pretty much what I got for the announcement. So I want to get into some material. I know it's been a few weeks. I haven't been on probably, I think about 3 weeks. I think last time we were on about 3 weeks ago. We've been getting into a lot of different things. You see the title. So I want to talk a little bit about Luciferian concepts, the principles of Lucifer, kind of dispel some of the misconceptions because, unfortunately, when we still hear these terms, first of all, infernal blessings to all. If I didn't greet anybody individually, shout out to everybody that's here and everybody that joins future. At some point when I'm finished going through what I want to go through, I will go through the chats to the best of my ability, time permitting, and try to get to most of your questions. And I will just begin at the top. Serpent-headed mask. Good to see you here, brother. I was thinking about you the other night. I posted on Wednesday night, went to the Kiss concert, and I know you're a big music fan. And it's funny. It's funny I see you here because you popped in my head on Wednesday night. But for those that are familiar with Kiss and are Kiss fans and know their music, amazing show. I posted a couple of clips to the best of my ability. I'm not the best filmer, but I posted what I could. But it was a great time. Doesn't matter how, some musicians, and I know we've talked about that on some shows, you could tell the difference between real musicians, real artists, people that write music, that are performers and entertainers, and then these flash in the pan artists, unfortunately, that a lot of us are stuck with now, that have minimal talent. And there's a lot of technology and studio stuff used to mask their weaknesses. But when you see bands and singers, not just Kiss, but I'm using Kiss as an example because, haven't seen them just this past Wednesday night. You appreciate musicians more when they actually play live instruments, sing live vocals, write music. It's a totally different experience. Unfortunately, the downside, with all this technology we have is great. But the downside is it's also masked a lot of people's or hidden a lot of these musicians' weaknesses. But man, when you see again, people that can write music, play instruments, and perform, it's a different experience to, unfortunately, what's out there now. And that's why a lot of these groups and singers in all genres stay around forever. You take people like Patti LaBelle, Stevie Wonder, groups like Kiss, the Rolling Stones. They stay around forever because they write music and play music, and it's totally different. But the show is amazing, man. My favorite part was Gene Simmons' segue into the song "God of Thunder." It never gets old, it never gets old. And the thing with Kiss is they're constantly adding to their stage show. Not only is it just a great live performance, but their stage show is, if you've ever seen it, is off the chain. And it's crazy how a group can get better with age and time. And man, I don't think, literally, and this is no exaggeration, I don't think one note from any instrument or key was out of tune, or one vocal was out of tune. I mean, you could just tell how these guys are veterans and professionals and been doing it so long. And it was worth every cent and every second of time. But great show. Yeah, if you guys ever get a chance, man, you got a band like that comes to your area, that, go see it, man. It's worth it. It's worth it. All right. So I wanted to talk about back to these different perspectives. I titled the video, Behold, Lucifer, Light from the East, right? Because we know there's different deific masks of Lucifer that represent different aspects of awareness, enlightenment, and consciousness. And we understand the main function and aspect of connecting with Lucifer. Now, as I said many times before on previous classes, there's different approaches to the Luciferian path, or there's different approaches to connecting with Lucifer energy, right? I don't really spend time on, bashing one over the other. I'm clear in my approach, in my work with Lucifer and working with Luciferian energy. I'm very clear in that approach. But there's different aspects of it. And as I've said over the years, it's very important that you do your research. It's very important that you get different perspectives from multiple authors. There's great authors out there. Richard K. Page, you got Michael W. Ford. The Temple of Ascending Flame puts out a lot of good stuff on Luciferian practices. I'm going to focus tonight on Simon Mark Alvarez. He comes from one perspective. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But I find Richard K. Page's approach, who in the past, as I've said before, I've had him on my show as a guest a few times, and trying to set something up again to reach out to him. We did try to set something up a few months ago. I never followed up. And he is in the UK, so there's a huge time difference. But I recommend his books too. I've recommended them multiple times because he has in my opinion, he has a very neutral approach to Luciferian practices, and he addresses all aspects. He has more of a esoterical, in my opinion, approach. Now, Simon Mark Alvarez, he focuses a lot on kind of taking apart, and disassembling the religious construct and kind of fixing it with the concepts of Lucifer. Now, there are some people that focus on it from an aspect of monotheism. But if you're familiar with Simon Mark Alvarez's work, he grew up in a very strict Christian environment, and which is very common amongst people that take on the left-hand path, the sinister path, the path of the occult. Sometimes, there's a focal point in an area of their life where it was impactful, and in this case, not probably in a productive way. So there are there's that approach, right? There are some who approach it literally, right? Some who look at Lucifer, as literally as a spiritual being or an entity. Then people always ask me, Baniti, what's your approach? I'm going to say it's a combination of all those things, right? Because the manifestation, if you're a person that has a personal experience with a spirit or a deity or a demon, or a god or a goddess, whatever you want to refer to it as, you are still manifesting that based on connecting with the aspects of your mind and your psyche, which is still in alignment with the first principle of Huti, always mental, mental is all. And as I said before, I always get this all the time, but I thought everything was mental. You're not really understanding that principle then. It is mental in the sense that it all has its point of origin, that it begins in the mind, in the subconscious minds, right? Okay. We can't negate that fact. But as I've said before, so people who do have what they are interpreting as some external phenomena or external experience by visions, things that they're seeing, communications, that is real too. So my approach is, I think all elements of it, there's a connection there. But I do also believe people connect on different levels. I'm not really focused on whether you look at, or nor do I really care, to be honest, whether you're looking at it from a literal perspective, whether you just think it's purely allegorical and metaphorical, whether you just have an esoterical approach, that's your business. My main thing, only thing I would say, regardless of what your approach is, as long as it's working for you and you're getting results, that's the main thing with me in any area of any spiritual work, period. And it doesn't matter if you're doing something that I may have never tackled or something that I can't relate to or connect with. If you're doing something and it's working for you, power to you, keep doing it. But the flip side to that is, if you're doing stuff and you've been doing it for a long time and you're not getting any results, then you need to look at what changes you need to make. So, this class isn't going to be based on bashing a particular approach, because that's irrelevant. I'm not interested in that. This is a path of self-mastery, right? Each individual has the right to choose how they want to approach it. So yes, whether you may not agree with it, there are people who literally look at deities, be it in this case Lucifer, and would do things that might you see similar with religious folks praying and things of that nature. I personally don't agree with that, in the sense that I really don't practice it in that regards, but I'm not going to knock anybody that does. That's their business if it works for them. But I will be clear in my approach. That's not my approach, right? But if the person that is doing that, as I just said a minute ago, and it's working for them, it's transforming them in their spiritual life, they're seeing the results in their life in all aspects, then who am I to say, don't do it? So I'm not focused on that. What I do want to give you guys is a different perspective from different approaches. So again, the reason why I entitled the video, Behold, Lucifer, Light from the East, we're going to talk about the wisdom aspect of one of the deific masks of Lucifer, right? Because there is a mask of Lucifer who some might know as Lord of the Air, right? We know air is a very, very highly spiritual, transformative element that's attributed to this aspect or deific mask of Lucifer. And he represents the manifestation of a wise elder that brings intellect, knowledge, wisdom, and understanding. Almost comes in the form as a wise mystic from the East, right? This is one of many. I want to focus on that aspect, because a lot of the mystical information we get through spirituality, through religion, right? Especially religions from the Far East, etc., have a strong connection to this deific mask. Now, the reason why I kind of pointed out this book, and I want to focus just on a short section in chapter 6, the final chapter, and this is a book called The Enlightened Luciferian by Simon Mark Alvarez. I believe there's 2 or 3 parts to this. This is the book here, available pretty much anywhere, Amazon. The Enlightened Luciferian by Simon Mark Alvarez. right? Again, his focus in this work here is dispelling a lot of the mythology of Christianity. Now, again, I don't want to even take the approach. It's not about bashing it. It can come off like that because sometimes when you are destroying a construct that's false, people can take it the wrong way, right? So it can come off like that. And remember, Luciferian practice, it's not about bashing and destroying religion because it's pointless. It's a waste of time. It's about getting to the root core fabric of the mythology of it and explaining it. And once you get to the root of it, and you can kind of, what we say, reform it, you can kind of give the correct information on it. Because as I said before, when it comes to religion, or it comes to the quote unquote so-called holy books, the Bible, the Quran, etc., those books have a lot of esoteric or occult information in it. It's not taught like that, and it never will be mainstream. And it's not going to be taught like that by monotheistic believers in Christianity, Judaism, or Islam in reference to the Quran, right? There is an esoterical science to it. So the Bible it becomes a poisonous book when it's spoon-fed to you through religion, through belief, through those dogmas I just mentioned, right? I bring that up because Simon Mark Alvarez focuses on that. That's kind of the aspect we're going to focus on, and its relationship to Lucifer, Lord of Air, or Lucifer, that wise elder that comes from the East, is to give a lot of wisdom on these topics, right? What most people fail to understand, and more so people who are not familiar with this path, who have been indoctrinated and been pumped with a lot of fear, because obviously, for the ignorant, when they hear the word Lucifer, their mind goes to all types of spooky imagery. It connects to the taboos of religions, especially Christianity. They have this morbid understanding of what Lucifer is through the wrong sources, and it's not what people think it is, right? That has to be eliminated from one's mind to really be able and be able to understand how to infuse when we're working with Luciferian practices and Luciferian principles. It doesn't work with old constructs. It doesn't work with old systems of indoctrination and ways of thinking. That has to be cleaned up, and for the individual to move forward and evolve. And this is what Simon Mark Alvarez focuses on in this book, because if you understand a little bit about him and the history and how he was raised, right? So I want to go into chapter 6 and just go through a couple of things in here real quick. Some good points. I would encourage you to obviously read the book. But chapter 6 gives some really good final thoughts. It gives some really good, solid, concrete principles on Luciferian practices and things of that nature, etc., which I think would be very helpful for all. All right. So let's go page 74. If you do have the book and you want to pull it out, go ahead and pull it out. The greatest thing about being a Luciferian is the ability to express your true self, right? So that's that's a major important thing on any path of spirituality, because that's when one has true liberation and spiritual freedom and sovereignty, right? Because when you are suppressed by all of those lesser systems of indoctrination, you can't really express your true self, because from the get-go, especially through institutionalized religions, you are programmed with rules and regulations, and there's a module to follow and a system that has to be followed to the T, and you can't deviate from it in any shape, form, or fashion because there's consequences, right? So that's a very interesting statement. That is one of, as he describes, is the greatest thing in his mind. To be a Luciferian is the ability to express your true self. A lot of us are in a bad space mentally, emotionally, and spiritually because we don't have that ability to truly express ourselves and be ourselves. And it could be for a multitude of factors. One could be in bad life situations, bad relationships, serious financial burdens. You could be in a very toxic living environment where you can't carry out your spiritual practice and do what you need to do. I always tell people over the years, it's very important Don't go to Spookyville first. You must start with your immediate surroundings first, because your immediate environment in your mundane world will affect your spiritual growth. And as I've said, if you're living in a very toxic environment and you're around toxic people and your growth is being suppressed and stifled, it's going to be hard for you to do as it's stated here, to really express your true self, to have that liberty, that freedom, and that spiritual sovereignty. Only then can one be free and liberated, right? When one has lifted the shackles and the chains of all of those things of suppression that have been thrown upon us from a very early age, that they continue to throw at us in everyday society. We see what's going on out here. I've been talking about it a lot the last couple of years. We see how the world is changing. We see how COVID has completely changed the world. And that's why I was saying back then, the world as we know it has ended. It has changed. You will never see that pre-COVID 2019 before world ever again. It's changed the way we think. It's changed the way we do business. It's changed the way we approach things as far as financially. The list goes on and on and on. So things have changed to a great degree, but there's also been a great spiritual awakening in this changing, right? Those that really went in were able to tap into a whole nother level of awareness, because one thing, as I've said before in the past, that when this pandemic first hit in the early, hard stages of it in 2020, was it really made me realize the importance of being self-independent, right? Making sure you're doing things, creating things, multiple streams of income, having long-term goals and financially and future for yourself and for your family and for anybody involved in your circle, et cetera, et cetera. We see we can't depend on a system that can crumble at any minute, unfortunately. And part of this, I think, obviously, as we've talked about over the last couple of years, has been intentionally, right? They had to, as I've said in the past, destroy this because it wasn't working, and they had to try to restart something else. So it's a great restart. But again, not to focus too much on the pandemic. But the whole point is, when getting back to, as he says, the ability to express your true self, you can't do that if you are in a toxic environment. So this is why through shadow work, you're supposed to do a check on the people you have around you. What kind of people do you have in your life? And be honest, what kind of people do you need to remove from your life? Doesn't matter if it's family, friends, or loved ones, significant others. Sometimes people in serious denial, they're in a toxic relationship with a husband, a wife, a boyfriend, a girlfriend. And they don't want to come to the realization that's what's holding them down. And not everything you love is good for you. You must understand that. Not everything you love is good for you. And sometimes to get to the root of the core of the problem, we have to figure out, why do we keep holding on to these things? What insecurity, fear, or uncertainty is there, right? And that's where shadow work comes into play, right? So the ability to express your true self is important or critical. Let me continue. As I mentioned previously in this book, you cannot be completely and truly free in life if you are convinced that God controls your destiny and fate. So what he's saying here, in essence, from a monotheistic belief point, you cannot be on this path if you believe there's some spook spirit God that is controlling the course and destiny of every aspect of your life. That is slave mentality, right? That is what keeps people controlled. And the powers that be that have created these religious theories feed off of that premise, right? So one thing a Luciferian must shed and completely destroy to be on the path of apotheosis and self-mastery is that you must throw that out the window, right? Because you were the one navigating your destiny by what? By the choices and the decisions you make. It's that simple. And that's all karma is, as I've said a million times, cause and effect. You're navigating the ship. Your choices and decisions will shape the outcome and the results. And in that journey, unfortunately, there'll be bad stuff. because you'll make some fucked up decisions, some bad choices, but a true God or goddess recognizes it and addresses it and fixes it. But then there'll be some wonderful things that'll manifest as you grow in knowledge and wisdom. You'll make wise choices. You'll make incredible decisions that are life transforming and changing, and that'll be impactful over a long period of time. So there's two sides to that. But remember, you as a god or goddess are at the root or the center of that change. By what? Because you are the god or the goddess that's making the choices, yay or nay. And the flip side again, you must take credit and responsibility for the things that go wrong, the bad shit that happens, the bad choices you make. But you also must take responsibility, credit, and acknowledgement for the good things that happen. So you must eliminate this belief that there's a spook God controlling every aspect of your life. It does not exist. All right. Regardless of the positive and or negative circumstances against you, you will never be emancipated throughout all the years of your life. You and you alone, with your creative mind and your emotions, along with your actions, is the greatest and strongest weapon or tool. This is powerful right here. We've been talking a lot in the last couple of YouTube videos about the creative aspect of your mind and your imagination. That is your subjective consciousness where you create things as a god or a goddess. That is where you are building and destroying your universes simultaneously. And you as the god or goddess on the center of your axis, all of this evolves around you, with you being the central or focal point. You're the builder, the destroyer, and the creator simultaneously, right? And it's a very powerful statement here that it says your mind and your emotions, right? That's along with your actions, right? As I said before, even the Bible says faith without works is dead. You can't just believe in shit. There must be some action behind it to support it. Your actions dictate how well you carry out the knowledge you claim to have. We call that on this path utilizing your wisdom to carry out the knowledge that you must or you claim to have, right? So this statement is very powerful because it says you alone with your creative mind. It says your creative mind. And remember, the number one thing they did, even when you go back, if you talk about a physical form of slavery or a mental form of slavery, right? They always go to work first on the mental. Because once they can capture you and they can control you mentally, the physical part is just going to automatically come together. Because like minds flock in same circles, right? So what they've tried to do from day one, when I say they, those who have an agenda for power and control, they go to work on the mind. And they've used religion as a serious weapon and tool for thousands of years to keep the masses controlled, right? But they know if you have a very powerful and creative mind and imagination, their fear is that you really tap in to that ability and power to create on your subjective realm and bring it into fruition on your objective realm. It's their biggest fear, people. That's true spiritual liberation. So they distract you with all of this external bullshit, all the stuff going on in the world, be it politics, religion, with conspiracy theories, you name it, wars. All these things are distractions because they're done and started to create control via fear. So we must utilize all of those principles. And now the emotion part is a little bit tricky. We have to be clear on this. I want to be very clear, because emotions can be a good or bad thing on a personal level to you as an individual, okay? Because anger, let's run through some quick emotions. There's good, what one? I want to be clear when I say this. There's emotions that some would label as bad and some would label as good. We know it's a matter of perception, right? Whether we're talking about emotions such as anger, rage, greed, jealousy, love, compassion, empathy, kindness, sadness, you name it, right? There's an influx of a wide range of how people would describe these things. So emotions can be very uplifting, but emotions can be damaging if you don't have control of them, right? Some will describe in spiritual circles, emotions is just energy in motion, right? And that energy can be to you as an individual on a personal level. Like for an example, most people will tell you anger and rage, you should eliminate that altogether. That's a bunch of bullshit. Okay. You must know how to channel anger and rage because there is a certain level of energy and passion behind that, right? You could take the fire, the energy, and the passion behind anger and rage and channel it towards something more productive for your growth. It's not about suppressing your emotions. It's about knowing how to facilitate them at the right time, at the right moment. Sometimes you got to get hyped. You got to get angry in certain situations because that could help you. Anger, though, can take you out if you pop off at the mouth or do something foolish and don't think about it. That's what I'm saying. It's a double-edged sword. Paths that tell you it's about suppressing all that don't know because they're not telling you the right thing. Suppressing it is even worse because if you completely suppress it, with that resistance comes more persistence. Sometimes you just need to vent. It's funny, in one of the last classes, I think she's in here today, Mika had asked, or I don't know, she emailed me about getting some of that or, exerting some of that physical energy in a ritual. Sometimes it's very exhilarating just to scream at the top of your lungs, just for the release. I've told people who deal with high levels of emotions like that, sometimes, such as myself, it's good to have a boxing bag in your house or personal gym or in your garage. It's a very exhilarating feeling knowing how to release and channel that energy. Suppressing it is no good because you're going to blow up on somebody at the wrong time, the wrong moment. It could be a significant other, a family member. It could be at your job. And that's when you don't want it to happen, or if somebody just catches you on the wrong day. Once you're able to release that rage and anger, then after that release, you can, through your ritual work, channel it towards something more productive like financial growth, mental growth, spiritual awareness. The list goes on and on and on, right? So this path is showing you how you utilize those emotions correctly. And though he describes this here, we must be aware of that because emotions can be a very, uplifting and destructive thing simultaneously. And one thing we have to be very aware of on this path, and again, our shadow work gets us in tune with that, we have to be really connected to our emotions. What do I mean by that? Why do we behave the way we behave? What triggers us? And understand what triggers us and why. Through that understanding of what triggers us and why, we're able to now facilitate the emotions correctly, right? Rather than just react out of pure anger, right? All of this is so critical in shadow work, understanding yourself, your emotions, but more importantly, understanding why they affect you, right? You can't negate that, okay? You cannot negate that. You must be in alignment and in tune with that, right? So I find it very interesting that he put that there. And then and obviously the last part, actions, right? There must be action, the body of work behind what you stand for, right? You can't have all this knowledge, as I've said before, read all these books, studied this or that, became a part of this group, got the certificate for this or whatever all the other shit people do. But yet it's not a living reflection or example in your life. As far as you're not getting those overall results, you haven't mastered yourself on a level spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and oh yes, financially. Oh yes, financially. The knowledge you claim to have should be a living reflection of what's going on in your life. You can't be a spiritual guru if you're living in your mom's basement and you ain't got no job. I'm sorry, don't be giving nobody advice. Get your shit together before you're trying to give somebody advice. I get that shit all the time. And it's not to be judgmental, but I'm not going to take advice from somebody who is not an example of the advice that they're giving. Meaning if somebody's giving you financial advice, they should have a track record of, I'm going to listen to somebody that's successful in investing money, that has a track record of successfully investing money. I'm not going to listen to somebody tell me and give me business and money advice and they're piss broke. They living like a bum, or they got a reputation of running pyramid schemes and shit like that. I just don't know how people get caught up. Do your research when you get involved in shit like that. Stop getting caught up with these people, right? Stop signing up to these Mickey Mouse clubs and groups that tell you sign up and come up under me and I'm going to make it. There's no such thing as anything coming quick in the snap of a finger. You're not going to get rich quick in a month Okay? You're not going to come on this path and be a master sorcerer. This shit is work. And anybody that tells you otherwise has no fucking clue what they're talking about. Okay? I never promote this. Not a quick fix off. If it was that easy, people, we wouldn't even be here having these conversations. Okay? We wouldn't even be here having these conversations. Okay? If it was that easy, people would just go about their business and do what it is they do. This is work. If you truly want to master yourself, you must put in the time, effort, and energy. You must put in the work. It's that simple. So if you think everything's going to be fixed at the blink of an eye and the snap of a finger, it's not the path for you. Trust me when I tell you. All right? All right, so then he goes on to say, to carefully engineer the greatest discovery and invention of your destiny that has no limits and all the infinite possibilities that you are capable of establishing. Here's something important right here. Remember, fear and doubt are your two worst enemies. You got to stop there real quick. This is what holds people back in a lot of aspects of life. It's a normal human emotion. It doesn't make you weak if you experience it. We all experience it to some degree. That's okay. That's not the problem. What the problem is when it overcomes you and you don't do anything to face it, right? That's when it becomes toxic. That's when it becomes a problem. Fear and doubt are two of the worst things that prevent people from obtaining any success in their life. Because unfortunately, you use a situational scenario where you might have to take a chance at something. And it could be a chance of failing. That's usually what creates doubt and fear in the individual, the thought of failing at something. It could be an investment. It could be playing a sport. It could be trying a new venture. It could be getting involved with a project. So the way you overcome something like that is there's a risk in anything that you do. It don't matter what it is. There's nothing you're going to do in life that doesn't have some form of risk in it. So you must establish to your subconscious mind, I'm going to dive in. I'm all aboard. And your mental approach is critical because some people defeat themselves before they even set out to do anything because they have those thoughts of doubt deep in the back of their subconscious mind. They might have a business. I've mentioned this before in the past. I know so many people I run into that have good ideas. They have good concepts. They might have some type of business venture or they might have some project that could be very beneficial. And they have all these wonderful concepts. They have a blueprint, a plan, but what stops them from carrying out is they have fear to fail, fear of losing something, fear of it not being successful. You can't live like that, people, because that's going to destroy and eat away at you until there's nothing left. And fear and doubt, when that eats away at you, a lot of things can go wrong. Depression can seek in, right? Bipolar disorder. It could start to affect you on a multitude of levels when you live in that state of constant fear. So fear and doubt are tools a true God or goddess must eliminate in order to be successful on this path. Look, as I said many times before, I find in the later years of my life, I'm doing things that I used to fear years ago, right? I'm tackling things that years ago I probably wouldn't have tackled. And being on this path has given me the ability to do that. Whether that's personal fears or phobias of specific things, it gets you to the root matter of why you fear these things. And that's how you overcome. If you don't understand why you fear them, you can never overcome them. So those must be eliminated. Fear and doubt are the feelings to always disregard and avoid. God desires his humans, the monotheistic God, to feel this way because he knows that people that have fear and doubt are truly his followers / slaves. And that's why I've said many times before, religion uses the emotion of fear to keep you controlled. Because you know how many people, they come from a religious system, they try to come on the occult, the path of the occult, and they have this fear or this doubt or almost this guilt of completely separating from where they came from. That's how strong the mental indoctrination can be, right? And I tell them, I say, look, it's more toxic if you try to play you'd be on the fence. If you try to have 1 foot in, 1 foot out, you're going to fuck yourself up on a serious level. To truly be liberated and evolve into the God or the goddess that you're destined to be, you must leave all that shit alone. If you really want to benefit and if you really want to tap into who you are and the great capabilities and the greatness that you come from, the only way you're going to be able to do that, leave all that shit that weighs you down, check it at the door, people. I've been saying this for the last 2 to 3 years. I told you we've entered an era and a time where all of those man-made religions and dogmas, they don't work no more, people. We must give them up, especially if you want to really, really reap the fruits and the blessings of what this path is about. Leave that shit alone. And I keep telling people, I see a lot more people getting fucked up. There's so many people on the internet now mixing the occult, the left-hand path with new age shit and Ifa shit. And that shit's going to fuck you up even more. Trust me when I tell you. That's even worse. You're none of those things. Those are all lesser paradigms of what this path is about. They're just small fragments of what this path is about. They're what I like to refer to as the lesser mysteries of spirituality. Leave that stuff alone and focus on yourself and move forward on mastering yourself. Because when you're attached to all those external things, it weighs you down. Not just on a conscious level that you're aware of, but on a subconscious level. It creates calcification on spiritual levels that you don't even, or you're not even conscious or aware of. And we know high states of calcification can completely block the pineal or the brow chakra or the third eye, as people call it. The third eye is the antenna and the signal that is the conductor that receives the communication and the frequencies of consciousness. That's how the psyche is open. That is the pathway. When that is obstructed, when that is blocked, you're disconnected from the potential of your spiritual abilities. Because when the body's spiritual body becomes dim and it's lacking light, and that light is the knowledge or the intellect that Lucifer represents, you become sick on a multitude of levels, not just physically. You become sick mentally. You become sick emotionally. As I said before, most people who get your standard illnesses, which they would label as flus and colds and infections and bacterial infections or viral infections, it's usually because the spiritual body is dim. It's not receiving the light or the intellect that it needs. And there's a disconnect then. And it creates disharmony between the physical and the spiritual. All right. And that's when illness that you can tap into and feel physically kicks in. Right. So your goal as a practicing master or god or goddess on this path is to create that harmony that you need in the formula that works for you to keep that light within the spiritual body vibrating at its pristine frequency. Right. You must look at a multitude of factors. Are you exercising enough? Are you eating to the best of your ability? Are you consistent in your spiritual practices, your meditations, your study, your research, right? This is how you create a harmonious lifestyle so you can reap the benefits to live to your potential of what you're destined to be, which is none other than a god or a goddess, regardless what anybody tells you. See, I gave up. I don't give a fuck what anybody tells me no more. I don't care about nobody's opinions. Everybody's entitled to their opinion, but opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one, right? So people can have their opinions. I'm done with that. That's fine. And usually people who have opinion of opposition, you usually struck a nerve in them. You're saying something that goes against or resonates within them, maybe on a belief or an ideology that they've been accepting for so long. And that's what it is. It is what it is, right? But if you want to have all of those aspects come together harmonious, this is how you live a harmonious and productive lifestyle, okay? Hold on, man. There's people who say these dumb things. You must be across the board consistent in all those areas that I just previously mentioned. Can't avoid it, people. All right? So let's continue on. A lot of good stuff in here. As God changed his mind from generation to generation, we're talking about the monotheistic biblical God, right? So have human beings, as we ourselves are gods. So what this is essentially saying, the reason why religious paradigm don't work, we're constantly changing and evolving in our thoughts and in our process. This is why anybody that belongs exclusively to any particular ideology or religion becomes mentally dead, because they don't expand their consciousness, right? They are focused specifically on a dogma that keeps them restricted. We know as humans, as we grow and evolve and age, not just physically, but as we age in wisdom and intellect, there's going to be changes with that. And the basic principles of metaphysics state what? Anything that doesn't change dies. And the problem is, most people that belong to religions, they're in religions that are not changing anything in their approach. They do everything the same day in and day out, week in and week out. Shit, they got a liturgical calendar that follows the religious seasons from Advent all the way up to Easter, and it's the same shit. It just keeps repeating itself over and over. That person becomes mentally dead. That pineal becomes blocked and obstructed. And they cut themselves off from higher states of their psyche being open via different levels of consciousness or understanding, right? Even their very Bible warned them about it, right? Their very Jesus warned them about it in the Bible, right? He tried to tell them, when the body is full of light, and I believe this is in Matthew, I can't recall the verse, somebody could look it up, the eye becomes one. What was he saying there? When the body is full of light as a whole, the eye becomes one. He's talking about this, right? The mind's eye, the third eye, the pineal, the brow chakra, whatever you want to call it. We know its function and its purpose, right? And what it serves in regards to that. So he was essentially dropping an esoterical concept that most of them didn't even understand at the time, and most still don't understand today because they're stuck in religious thought. It's along the precepts when it says, God don't dwell in places made by man's hands. God, like it says also in the Bible, God dwells within, right? But yet there's a flip of the script where we have a group of people who still want to build physical edifices to the Creator. And the list goes on and on and on, right? So as this God has continuously changed his mind, why is it we can't? Because we're changing too as we grow in our understanding. Right? You can't be at the same level. If you wake up today and you're in the same space spiritually, mentally that you were 15, 20 years ago, hey, you better do a serious check. Something ain't right. Something not right. This path is about constant change. You should always be growing and changing constantly. When the change stops, you need to check yourself. Something's not right. Because without change, there can't be no growth. It's that simple. How can things grow if they're not changing? I mean, and again, this is not to be judgmental, but I just noticed this, and maybe you guys notice this too, whatever states you live in and whatever people you're around. When I see a lot of these older school religious Christians, they got this vibe about them. They just look like zombies. They just look like they're mentally dead. And they got this glassy look in their eyes when you talk to them. They look like, I mean, the best way I could describe it is zombified. And it's just it's an energy. And anytime I look at them or talk to them, it's like they're clueless to what's going on. It's like they're in their own little paradox and they can't get out of it. And it's almost like somebody has a remote control and is controlling them. I bring that up to say we now can see and we have the ability to detect those who are mentally dead. Right? We can see it. It all reverberates through every aspect and core of their being. And I'm not saying that that's a thing that I enjoy seeing. But unfortunately, you can now see the separation. You see who's mentally asleep. And you can now start to see who's spiritually awoke. Right? And I hate to use the word woke, but spiritually awake. Right? All right. Truly, Lucifer is both a spiritual an actual entity, a spiritual and a actual entity. So he's also coming from that approach. When we look at the concept or construct of what Lucifer represents, right? When you talk about the manifestation of deity or spirit, that's very personalized, right? But you can't take a concept that is that affects a multitude of people and try to bring it under one umbrella, such as Christianity does, because everybody has different experiences with spirit. So your manifestation and your connection literally with spirit, in this case, Lucifer, that is something very personal that you manifest via your work, via your rituals, and via your connection, right? So notice that he's saying here it is both a spiritual and actual entity. The actualization of it is how you manifest it through your understanding. That's the actualization of it. So this is why I've said many times over the years, you can't compare your spiritual experiences to somebody else. They're not going to be exactly the same. I'm not saying they won't. There might be some similarities. And then when you have some of those similarities and similar like experiences, then you can dialogue about that, right? But it's very personal. So I like his approach on that. It's actual, it's a spiritual, and it's an actual entity. Whether he lives in our world or in a different realm and or dimension, his wisdom and knowledge is influential and inspiring to mankind. And we're talking about the aspect Lucifer, Lord of air. Lord, that's why I say, behold, Lucifer from the east, right? Because we know, as it's broken down in the occult, Lucifer means light bearer. Lucifer is the only entity that embodies light and darkness simultaneously. Lucifer is a representation. You can't have one without the other. It's not all about the light, coming to the light and love, light this, light that. Well, you wouldn't even create the separation, because for you confirming and acknowledging light, whether you're conscious of it or not, you're also confirming and acknowledge that there was darkness prior to the light. And when you go into their own book, let's read it. All right, the book that I'm using, just Enlightened Luciferian by Simon Mark Alvarez. I'm going through a very short section in chapter 6. I'm just noting some key points, building on it. But let's in regards to darkness, I've done this before, but let's run through it. If you have a Bible, pull it out. Make sure it's an authenticated King James version, because he's the authentic. Let me stop. Just having a little fun with that shit. But I am using the original King James, the original, not the new revised, because they changed some shit in that one. Anyway, if you go into the very first book of the Bible in reference to darkness and light, and it's a good understanding to have with this, because it shows the connection with Lucifer, right? In the book of Genesis, chapter 1, verse 1, in the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Doesn't really get into detail, but watch. And watch what the second verse says. I find this very interesting. And the earth was without form and what? Void. What do we always talk about? If it's the clipod going into the void and the abyss, right? We hear that all the time on the occult, the left-hand path. We're connecting with this primordial energy that Genesis is mentioning before, quote unquote, according to their theology, anything was created. Watch this. So again, let me repeat. And the earth was without form and void. And look at the next word. And darkness was upon the face of the deep. So we see a state of nothingness, a state of void. Okay? They even use the term the deep. So when we're working with aspect, one of our goals is to tap into that primordial state, because we know from that abyss, that void, that deep, and that darkness, all things emerged from that. You can't get around that. I don't give a fuck what your belief is. Because even if you have a religious belief, your religion confirms what I'm saying right now. And it gets even worse. Watch this. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. So upon this void, this deep, so we see a watery, dark, void abyss that now is formless and has no light, according to what this is saying. Now, there's a concept in ancient Egypt called the chaotic waters of Nun, the dark, watery abyss. Even when you get into the knowledge of Tiamat, it talks about the dark, chaotic, watery abyss. Out of this dark chaos, all things have emerged, even the biblical God. Because in the next verse, it doesn't say until verse 3, and God said, let there be light, and there was light. So the question I've always posed to religious people, how long, and they can never answer this. They just jump around. Just say you don't fucking know. Stop beating around the bush. How long was God living in that void, that abyss, that state of darkness before he said, let there be light? And this so-called light that everybody talks about emerged. But when that light emerged is when the chaos ensued. This is when chaos began. And then we have artificial light, right? The light we talk about as Luciferians and light bearers is the intellect. That true light or knowledge must be obtained in the darkness. And as I've said before, that's why, for an example, I've used the Masonic Lodge, and being a Mason and going through the Blue House, going through the Red House, going through all the degrees in Scottish and York, right? You go through the Lodge degrees blindfolded in darkness, because one cannot get the true understanding of it when they are blinded by the light. So it's reverse, people. Religion is teaching you to come into the light, but you will not find, quote unquote, the true God manifesting in this light they keep calling you to. The only place you're going to find God, which is the true God that resides within yourself, is in the darkness. It must start there. You can't get around that. I don't care what your ideology is. I don't care what your belief is. In order to have something first, you must have a state of nothingness. That's basic science. So all things emerge from that nothingness, regardless of what you're calling it. God, my question is, if somebody believes in this fairy tale mythological story of Genesis, my question is, if this is the beginning, and we know it's not, because all we got to do is go down to verse 26, talked about that a million times. If this is the beginning, the question that nobody can ever answer is, who created God? And I want to hear a bunch of mumbo jumbo. God just is. Or you could use some really slick sounding phrases. That's not answering the question, though. To say God just is a polite way of saying you just don't know. That's all. And I bring it up to show you the inconsistencies and the fallacies in these stories. So we must establish and understand what darkness and light is, because here's an even deeper thing. True light is darkness. What do you mean? That sounds crazy. That sounds contradictory. You sound crazy. What happens when you take all the colors of the spectrum? I think I talked about this briefly. Can't remember if it was on a Patreon class or here on YouTube. I'm not sure. But what happens when you take all the colors of the spectrum, right? And you merge all of the colors, they form what? Black. That's basic science. So really, darkness is an illusion too. It's darkness in the sense of the way we're perceiving it, but true darkness, here we go, is actually true light or intellect. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. Because all the colors on the spectrum form what we're calling black light. Dark Light Consciousness by Dr. Edward Bruce Bynum describes it perfectly when he talks about what dark light is, or what black matter is, or what black light consciousness is. That's where true knowledge is obtained. Okay? And to show you how fast that travels, I mentioned this before over the years. And if you understand the spectrum and the colors on it and how light travels and moves, you will also get a better understanding the illusions that come along with it. Let me give you an example. And I've talked about this, I believe, briefly in the past. Okay. A lot of us have taken plane, like flew on a plane, right? A lot of us have been above bodies of water while flying on plane. And if you ever recollect on different flights you've been on, sometimes the water looks blue. Sometimes it looks kind of greenish. Sometimes it looks gray and murky, right? Question is, why do you see it like that, right? If you understand basic science and how light moves through the spectrum, right? Like we perceive on a clear day that the sky is blue, and usually the sun reflects off of water. It'll create
the illusion that the water looks blue. It's not that it's blue. It's just blue is the fastest moving color on the spectrum. That's all. So it's creating the illusion of how you're seeing the reflection of it coming through. And that's the colors, because it's the fastest moving color. It's the first color you see, right? So I'm saying all this to say, when we talk about light and darkness, we must establish what it is we are perceiving and what it is we are looking at, because they have reversed this perception of what light and darkness is. Because people hear the word darkness right out the gate, they've already attributed so much negativity that's associated with that darkness. Oh, darkness means evil, Satan, the devil, death, destruction. No, that's not what we mean. Okay? You were born in darkness. That's where you were at your most peaceful state. You lived in a watery abyss in the sack in the womb of your mother for 9 months. You swam around in dark, chaotic waters, and you were comfortable, and you were in the fetal position as you started to evolve over that 9-month period. And I said this many times before. I don't care how old we get as adults. What's the first comfortable position we go to? If you're laying down on the couch or in your bed watching TV, you turn on your side and you go into that fetal position, because your subconscious mind remembers where you were most comfortable. It wasn't in the light. It wasn't in the chaos. It was when you were in that dark void and abyss in the womb of your mother, laying in that fetal position in the womb of the great mother, or as we call it on the path of the occult, the cave of Lilith, right? When we hear about the cave of Lilith, we're talking about the great womb of the great mother, right? We know what the fuck we're doing on this path. People have no idea. They have so many false misconceptions of what this is about. But you know, your spirit, your soul knows from where it emerged. And the only place it will ever be comfortable is when it's back home in that void, that abyss, that chaos, that darkness. Not chaos in the sense that it's chaotic, no order. There's primordial chaos, because raw, unfiltered energy is chaos, right? But in the light, order must be made out of that chaos, because when chaos runs amok in the light, it needs some type of structure. That gets into a whole nother concept. But you know when it was you were home. So don't sit there and be afraid of the darkness when your subconscious mind, anytime it gets the chance, what's the same thing you do on a cold night? If you live in a cold environment, right? You get up under the covers and you get in fetal position, because you remember warmth. You remember the energy of being in the womb of the great mother. You remember the calmness and the tranquility and the peace of that dark, chaotic, watery abyss. It's the only place that you can ever tap into where you truly meshed into just being, right? It's the only place. But when you were birthed into this physical realm, that's when you were blinded by this artificial light, that's when chaos started to manifest. That's when it started to blind you. So therefore, we have all of these religious paradigms telling you, come into the light, brother. Peace, love, and light. And that's why I said in the Masonic Lodge, that's why you're blindfolded on all the degrees, right? Especially in the Blue House, first 3 degrees. And I've mentioned it, like I said before, I'll never forget going back over 21, 22 years ago, that first experience when the blindfold was taken off and that entered apprentice degree. And that's what they say before they cut the lights on. You have a brother behind you who removes the blindfold, and then the whole craft, the brothers will clap and they'll say, let there be light. And simultaneously, at the same time they cut the switches on, the blindfold is removed. And I'll never forget, you know what it's like if you're in a dark room for a long period of time and the lights get cut on. That was a powerful thing for you to remember, that once that light, you got blinded by that light. It took you a minute to adjust. And then being in that darkness for so long, at first, when the adrenaline is pumping, might be a little bit of fear, but you kind of merge into it. So they're trying to show you something, even in those degrees, right? You can't avoid the darkness. You can't run from it. How can you run from something you emerged from? It makes no sense, right? Even their God. That's why I read that first couple of chapters in Genesis, all right? Let's continue on. One great thing about Lucifer, the entity, is he has never betrayed himself and has persisted his belief, if the Holy Bible and the Holy Quran are correct, that he is above all and not inferior to anyone. That's why when you read the story, right, of Iblis in the Quran, who refused to make obeisance to Adam because he said, I'm made from fire. He's made from the dust of the ground. I'm inferior. I'm superior. And as I said before, the Yazidis believe, they use that story where in religion they say, oh, Lucifer was being rebellious, where the Yazidis looked at it as a rite of passage. He passed that test by not bowing down to something that was less superior to him, right? So when we get into this here in regards to that, and I find this interesting, let's go back into the Bible. If you go to Revelations chapter 12, let's go there real quick. It's not what people think it is. It's hard when you've been programmed and they've feeded you all this nonsense. Where is it? Right here. If you go into Revelations chapter 12, verse 7, right? Let me read it. And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought and his angels, and prevailed not. Neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him, right? So this is the religious story of the war that took place in heaven between, quote unquote, Satan and, quote, his army against Michael and his army, right? And the word Michael back in if you go into the Hebrew, Mikael, he who dares to be like El, he who dares to be like God, right? He was given that name because according to the religious theology, he was the angel that stepped up, as they say, to do that war or that battle. Now, the Yazidis look at this in a totally different perspective. They don't look at it the way a religious person looks at it, right? They believe that if you read Al-Jilwa, the Black Book, their theology, they believe that Lucifer was the Khalifa or successor that was left here to rule the earth. And their God that they have in their story that was responsible for creation departed and leaves Lucifer here. I'm just saying, according to their theology. I'm not telling you to accept it or not. I'm trying to piece a couple of pieces together for you here. Now, they talk about this way up in Revelations chapter 12, but I find something very interesting if you go back into Genesis chapter 6. And I think when we had Val Cadman on, we went through this a few months back. Let me run through this real quick. I find this interesting. Keep that story in mind. Where is it? There we go. Go to the 6th chapter of Genesis if you have a Bible. Stop fronting. I know a lot of you motherfuckers do. Stop fronting. There were giants in the earth in those days. This is Genesis chapter 6, verse 4. And also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them. And the same became mighty men which were of old, men of renown, or renown, as they say. Now, the word giants, you'll see in the Hebrew, is Nephilim. So there were these giants or Nephilims, right, that came down to earth and came into the daughters of men and produced children from them. Some people say these were the fallen angels mentioned in that story in the 12th chapter of the book of Revelations. Now, it couldn't just, when it alludes to the serpent in the garden, I find this interesting. Because remember, Revelations 12 said that old serpent, Satan called the devil, that deceived many. Well, did he? Let's look. Because it looks like the deceiver is the person narrating this Bible, or who they refer to as God. Let's go to Genesis chapter 3. Let's see who really was lying and was tricking and deceiving people. Chapter 3, verse 1. Now the serpent was more subtle than any beast of the field which the Lord God had made. So let's establish now, who's the root cause of all of these problems? Who created this serpent or this devil that this Bible is talking about? Ask a person, a religious person this. They'd have to be honest and say they're God. Okay? But they'd have to be honest. Because remember, God is the one responsible for all this madness, but nobody ever. So if we can get into all this fallen angels, war in heaven, cast out, but who was responsible for the creation of this character called the devil? Nobody ever talks about that, but watch this. And he said unto the woman, this is God, yea, hath God said, ye shall not eat of every tree of the garden? And the woman said unto the serpent, we may eat of the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God hath said, ye shall not eat of it, neither shall ye touch of it, lest ye die. So now we got a God who likes to play tricks on motherfuckers now. Watch this stupidity. Here is, shit's so bizarre. Here is two individuals that are in this great paradise, right? It's got all these wonderful things. They can do whatever they want. Now, you know how human minds work. They can roam anywhere they want, do whatever they want. They can touch anything they want, but the tree in the middle, right? Can't touch that. People, if we were all in a room and I put a box on the center of the table that was locked and said, look, man, you can do whatever you want in this room, but that box in the middle, don't open that box. The first thing, as soon as I walk out that room, everybody's going to be inquisitive to want to know what the fuck is in that box. So here we got a God doing these psychological torture tricks. So what's going to happen, right? We've all read the story. We know, though they had access to everything in paradise, what's getting ready to happen. And if you believe the stupidity, the serpent was sent there to test them, and they were punished for their infallibility. So God didn't know they were going to do any of this stuff. And again, but let's back up. What is the point of even going through all this madness? Why even create this serpent or this devil? Why even put these two pathetic individuals, according to the story I'm saying, in this garden and play all these mind fucking tricks on them? It just doesn't make sense, people. But watch. And the serpent said to the woman, ye shall not surely die. He's trying to say, man, this God lied to you. For God doth know that in the day ye eat thereof, your eyes shall be opened, and ye shall be as gods, knowing good and evil. What's one of the commandments in Exodus? I am the Lord your God. What? Have no other gods before me or besides me, whatever this says. That's fishy in itself, because obviously there's some fear by God of some competition he might have. Who could compete with the all-knowing, omnipotent, and omnipresent, omniscient God? You can't. But apparently he's got some insecurities, right? So he said, you will become like gods, right? Knowing good and evil. And when the woman saw that the tree was good for food and that it was pleasant to the eyes, and the tree to be desired to make one wise, she took of the fruit thereof and did eat, and gave also unto her husband with her, and he did eat. And the eyes of them both were opened, and they knew that they were naked. So now all of a sudden there's this whole awareness of knowing. So they didn't, watch this. They sewed fig leaves together and made themselves apron. It gets worse now. And they heard the voice of the Lord God walking in the garden in the cool of the day. So God needs to, he doesn't like to walk outside when it's hot. And God is walking here. Are we talking about a human God that has legs and feet, or is this symbolic? Ask them that. Okay. And Adam and his wife hid themselves from the presence of the Lord God amongst the trees of the garden. And the Lord God called unto Adam and said, where art thou? So he can't be the all-knowing. This is I'm back up here, people. This is a God that created the Garden of Eden, according to the religious theology, I'm saying. But he didn't even know where Adam and Eve was. He couldn't find them. How could, again, an all-knowing, omnipotent, omnipresent God not know where something that he created was coming from? Okay? And then, for the sake of time, you know the rest of the story. They get punished, cursed, banished. Eve is given the burdens of childbearing. Adam is given the burden of his seed working for the rest of their lives, basically. So now we have this narcissistic God that wants to, because his ego was bruised, he wants to now carry out some stupidity punishment of disobeyment. Now, the moral of the story there is simply, who was telling the truth in that story? If Satan the serpent is that great deceiver that deceived the elite, he was telling the truth in that story. Because the story, if you look at it from the correct context, right? The story is trying to tell you this God feared them becoming on the same level as him. That's why he says, have no other gods before me. I'm a jealous God, which is a human emotion. My next question would be, how can God be jealous? I don't understand that. We as humans experience the emotion of jealousy. So does God. I mean, this is really like some science, some evil scientific project, really, when you look at it. So the serpent, now here's the contrary to how theology teaches it, they will tell you that the serpent went to the woman because of her vanity and vainness. And that's not completely true. The woman might be vain in some aspects when it comes to beauty and things of that nature, but that's not why the serpent knew the woman had the higher intellect and he would be able to get this understanding across easier to the woman than he would the man, because the woman was more in alignment on a spiritual level. And then what did the punk ass man do in the story, Adam, when he was confronted? He now all of a sudden, he said, the woman that you gave me as my wife forced me to eat it. Now he's like, he just basically threw her ass under the bus. And there's a lesson to be learned in that too. Okay. So we see when we evaluate these stories and compare them to how they're presented on the surface through religious theology, there's a lot of inconsistencies there. So what they're saying about the serpent, the devil, Lucifer, and all these different things is in opposition to what it actually says there. It's just depending on how you're going to look at it, not the way that they spoon feed you on it. Okay? You must look at this in a whole different perspective or context. It takes on a whole different meaning. You can't look at it the way that they spoon fed you. Okay? So the man now becomes a coward and shifts the blame to the female now. Says, the woman you gave me. It's stupidity at its highest level. Complete stupidity at its highest level. So we can't look at that story from that perspective. And again, remember, it's the way we correct this, as it said in the Enlightened Luciferian book, you must go to the root of the mythos, reevaluate it, and reconstruct it to get a better understanding of it, right? And this is what we're doing now. We're getting to the root of the mythos, right? And we're saying, look, that shit don't make no sense. And here's why. And now we are reconstructing that mythos and putting it into its right context, okay? So when you look at all that, you must approach it with that type of mindset. And to show you when we look, and I mentioned this, and I'm going to mention it one last time, then I'm going to move on, get out of this. To show you there's no difference or separation between this light and darkness, this what people call light and darkness, good and evil, it's even confirmed in their own book, right? Let's go real quick, and then we'll move on. Let's go to Isaiah chapter 45 real fast. And the best way to break this stuff down is to use their own book so they can't dance around, right? Go to the 45th chapter of Isaiah. Watch this. I find this very interesting too over the years. Let's start with verse 5. Start with 45, verse 5. Watch this. I am the Lord, and there is none else. There is no God beside me. I started there because who's speaking here, right? We can't deny the fact this is the omnipotent, all-knowing, monotheistic God. Can't escape that. Okay? Can't escape that. Then the next verse says, well, the last part of that verse is, I girded thee, though thou hast not known me. Verse 6, that they may know from the rising of the sun and from the west that there is none beside me. I am the Lord, and there is none else. So obviously this God has an ego. He's got to keep rambling on and on. I am the greatest, biggest, baddest mofo on the planet. You see, he rambled on for 3 verses. I am no other beside me. I'm the great, vainglorious. You see the narcissistic, braggadocious personality of this God, right? Now watch what he says in verse 7. I formed the light, right? We saw that in Genesis. So I'm going to bring it round full circle now. We saw that in Genesis. I form the light and create darkness. He would have to, because he was in darkness before he said, what? Let there be light. All the shit's right here in front of you. Watch this. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace. Here's the backbreaker. And I create evil. Whoa, wait a minute. Let me say it again. I'm saying this is what their Bible, biblical God says. I make peace, and he's taking responsibility, and I create evil. And then he puts a final stamp of approval on, I, the Lord, do all these things. So who's responsible for the creation of light and darkness, good and bad? And who creates evil? According to the Bible, their biblical God. People, don't let these people fool you. The problem that they're not telling you that they're separating one and the same thing. What they basically did was take light and darkness and separate it into 2 entities and called God, who represented the light, Lucifer, Satan, the devil, that represented the darkness. And really, in essence, it's all one and the same thing. There's no separation. They're trying to pretend there is, but there isn't. Just as much when you look at something and people will say there's duality to everything in the universe, well, it's the same thing here. That duality, or how it's perceived, it's going to take on different forms as far as how it's presented to one. There's no difference between the two. When you're saying light and darkness, you are talking about 2 fragments of the same thing. That's what I'm trying to get you to see. So they took that and they ran with it, right? And they turned it into this man worship bullshit, right? It's no different than what they did with Jesus, the Son, which really represents the S-U-N Son, not the S-O-N Son. That's the Son, and then they took his 12 disciples and they made them people, which is the 12 signs of the zodiac. No different. They had to humanize this shit because they wanted to get humans locked into human man worship. See, that's the problem with the lesser religions. It focuses on the worship of man. Okay? And it doesn't want you to think outside of that box. And as I've said many times before, the root foundation of their Bible, for an example, would be the children of Israel and the Exodus story. Nobody to this day can produce one record in ancient Egypt showing a group of people called Israelites in bondage in Egypt for 430 years. It doesn't exist. Now there's a group of people called the Hyksos that were driven out by Thutmose the first, who really is the Moses of the Bible. They took all of their information and sources and stories from cultures that predated it. Everything you're reading, when you're reading the first 7 chapters of Genesis, you're reading a watered down version of the Gilgamesh epics and the Sumerian tablets. Everybody knows that. Shit, people like Zachariah Stitchin and others put out books on this years ago. Ivan Van Sertima talked about it. List goes on and on. What I'm trying to, or have been trying to get people to see for years, these are fabrications of stories that predate it. Okay? Because if you can't find, bottom line, if you can't find any record, show me one Egyptian record where it mentions people called by that name, Israelites. Show me one Egyptian record where it mentions a man by that name of Moses. Can't do it. Can't do it. Don't even try. You're wasting your time. But what I'm wanting to point out with that quote there is, don't separate the light and the darkness. It's one and the same. All right. Back to this, and then I'll take some questions. I just got one more short section in here, and then I'm going to go to the chat. So Lucifer has never deceived himself, right? Let's back up. He is above all not inferior to anyone. He will not even recognize the alleged creator of the universe to be above him. Since Lucifer, after being removed from heaven, and he puts in parentheses, if true, has established his kingdom here on earth. That's why I read you those quotes. Because what happened is, in that, you always hear me say over the years, that casting out, that fall was your ascension. Because there are some in certain circles that believe that that was the root seed of those direct children. Now, again, I'm not telling you to accept that or not. There are some, you do your own research and come to your own conclusions. There are some in certain occult circles that believe some of us are direct descendants of those quote unquote fallen angels, and that we are direct descendants and byproducts of those in that story that it mentions, where they came down to earth and came into the daughters of men and they produced children. Some believe we are a byproduct from that quote unquote situation or story, right? Again, you do your research. I'm not telling you to accept it. I'm not telling you to reject it. I'm just putting information out there, trying to give you different perspectives. One, so you can come to your conclusion. Okay? So keep that in mind when you're reading these stories. They're fragments, bits and pieces of stories and cultures that predate it. All right? All right. Lucifer has never deceived himself, as he is convinced that he has and deserves all the power that he needs to get, which is his every desire, wish, and request. Without him, and this is an important point right here, check this out. Christianity, Catholicism, and Islam would not even exist. Why is he saying that? Because he's saying that if you remove this mythological devil character from the Christian story, there will be no purpose for Christianity, because the whole concept of Christianity is to defeat this theological concept of the devil. Without it, religion wouldn't exist. So if we remove the devil from the equation, there is no need for Christianity. So the question is, does God need the devil more than the devil needs God? Ask yourself that question. God needs that devil more, because without him, there is no power. Now watch this stupidity. I got to go back. Let me show you this. This is crazy. Go to the book of Job. And some of the stuff we're doing in here tonight, by the way, it's kind of what we do in the esoterical occult Bible study class on Patreon. We focus on the esoterical occult meaning of the scriptures. We go through them word verbatim. So I definitely encourage you guys to check that out. All right. Go to, where the hell is Job? Oh my God, I'm getting rusty on my Bible skills. Getting rusty. Nah, never get rusty.
gotta catch the Holy Spirit. Shama lama ding dong. Shama lama 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 lama. Shama lama ding dong. That shit be killing me when they do that shit. Motherfuckers be sounding like I don't know what. All right. I think it's 2. Yeah. Yeah. Let me make sure. Hold on. Why am I struggling here? Hold on. There we go. All right. So go to Job chapter 2. All right. Watch this. I find this story very fucking entertaining. In chapter 2, Job 2, again, there was a day when the sons of God came to present themselves before the Lord. Now, sons of God, plural. I thought Jesus was the only sons of God. But anyway, that's a whole nother story. Notice the inconsistency there. Present themselves before the Lord, and Satan came also among them to present himself before the Lord, because Satan technically would be a child of God too, right? And the Lord said unto Satan, this is funny as hell, from whence comest thou? Again, the all-knowing, omnipotent, and omnipresent God didn't even know where Satan came from. This shit is comical. And Satan answered the Lord and said, from going to and fro in the earth, and from walking up and down in it. So he's saying, man, I just been macking. I'm all over the place. How the fuck would you not know that? If you are who you say you are, right? And the Lord said unto Satan, now look at his ego kick in. Look at his narcissistic personality kick in. Because Satan came at him and was like, man, I'm just kicking it, man. I'm just living life. I'm all over the universe. Now he got mad because he couldn't figure the shit out. Look how he responds to him. And the Lord said unto Satan, hast thou considered my servant Job, that there is none like him in the earth, and perfect and upright man, one that feareth God and escheweth evil. He's like, have you considered my bitch Job? He's a bitch, boy. He does whatever I ask him to do. I bet you can't trick and deceive him and turn him against me. You see this game they're playing here? There's some crazy shit when you look at it. What poor Job do to deserve having to be part of this little game these two got going on here? We know, without reading the rest, we know what happened. So they make this bet. He said, have you considered my servant Job? You could do whatever you want to him. You just can't touch him. We know what happens. Everything gets taken and stripped away from Job, this and that. And we think it's some great reward after that. Job never turned on God, stayed loyal to him, and he was given a whole new life and a whole new family. So God had to put him through that cruel test. Maybe Job liked his first family. Maybe he was content with that shit. You don't know that. But you see the stupidity in this nonsense? This is the type of God that's demanding your allegiance to worship him? I don't know, people. That shit sound kind of fishy to me. I smell fish, man. Anyway, let's continue. As these religions only exist to convince mankind to not become followers of Lucifer, which is very funny, right? And we shouldn't be followers of anything, okay? And rather followers of God. Indeed, Lucifer does his job every day to bring enlightened intelligence to mankind by revealing himself from a scientific perspective. As the morning dawn and evening dusk, star clearly visible, coming in second place after the moon. To everyone who is awake and able to see his beauty, the morning and evening star is actually the planet Venus. Venus is also called what? Phosphorus. Is the planet that symbolizes enlightened intelligence. Now watch this shit. Somebody's playing tricks. Having that Simon Mark Alvarez put that in there. Watch this now. Go to Book of Isaiah,
chapter 14. We're having Bible class today. Amen. Well, somebody catching the ghost out there. Stop fucking around. Go to Isaiah chapter 14. I think I should put on the ticket, call in for your, for your love donation or your miracle water or your prayer cloth. That shit be killing me, boy. You want some comedy, man? I mentioned them, I think a month or so ago. Man, go watch some motherfucking Peter Popoff, boy. That's some funny ass shit. Man, that motherfucker be having me on the floor cracking up. Not despite the fact he just looked creepy as hell, like some type of pedophile or something. Dude is just a comical joke. So look at this in Isaiah chapter 14, verse 12, in reference to what Simon Mark Alvarez just had there in Enlightened Luciferian, right? It says in Isaiah 14, verse 12, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How wilt thou cut down to the ground, which did weaketh the nations? Who was also else referred to in the Bible as the morning star? We see Lucifer's referred to it in Isaiah 14, verse 12. Now, I want you to go to Revelations chapter 22, verse 16. That title was given to Lucifer, but let's see who else they give that title to. And again, in relation to what Simon Mark Alvarez is talking about here. Go to the 22nd chapter of Revelations. And I believe it's the 16th verse. Watch this. You ought to know you're going to have Bible class tonight, huh? Just going to get a choir behind me. Stop. Revelations chapter 22, verse 16. I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify unto you these things in the churches. I am the root and the offspring of David and the bright and morning star. See that shit? I told you guys before in the past, this character they call the devil and this character they call Jesus. I did a whole video on it. They're one and the same. If you look at the Baphomet that everybody is so familiar with, and in some circles overly obsessed with, in my opinion, when you see the Baphomet perched, sitting on the earth in that position we're all familiar with the hand down, pointing down, the finger and pointing up. If you look at a lot of the churches in the Far East, right, a lot of the first churches of ancient Christianity that still exist, you can Google this right on the internet. I've posted the images in the past. There's that same image of Jesus sitting on an earth or a globe with his finger and his hand just like this in the same Baphomet pose. Who's fucking with you, people? Somebody is fucking with you. Okay? Pull it up. You'll see the pictures of Jesus in the Baphomet pose. I pulled them up before. I have them on. Go look on the Facebook, the Instagram. Go back to some of the earlier posts. Trying to show you the mind fucks that they're playing on us people. Okay? They're really screwing with your mind. Because what Jesus represents and what Baphomet represents is two of the same things in its entirety. Totality, equilibrium, divine union and harmony of the masculine and feminine forces. That's why Baphomet has the goat face of a man, the breast of a woman. Androgyny, the infusion of masculine and feminine energy. You see the four elements, earth, air, fire, and water, all superimposed on the Baphomet, the scales in the belly, the fire of the activated pineal gland, the air, the above and the below. It's all there, perched on the earth because the goat likes to rule from looking up in high places like a mountain so it can look down on its subjects. So that represents a symbolic of rulership and nobility. All of that is encased in the Baphomet. So they superimposed the Jesus over that. Okay? Somebody been playing serious mind games, but nobody wants to address it. Okay, like I said before, if you understand the esoterical occult breakdown of the Bible, it's not a bad thing. And we're getting ready to do that with the Quran. Right, we're going to go through all 114 chapters of that Quran and show you the God of that Quran is none other than Iblis, and we're going to connect it to the Yazidi culture. I'm going to show you how that is. Okay. So who people been thinking this God has been for years is not who you think it is. Right? All right. Last section. So we left off. The morning and evening star is actually the planet Venus. Venus is also called phosphorus. It is the planet that symbolizes enlightened intelligence. It also symbolizes feminism, and it is the primary symbol for the gender female. Since woman, the female gender, symbolized the ability to give birth to nature and anything relevant to being an organism. Thus, it is the equivalent of the bringer of light, Lucifer. Lucifer is the angel responsible for giving birth to intelligence to mankind. Okay? Since he is the light bearer, he is the angel responsible for lighting the torch with the infinite flame that can only be put out with fear and doubt, which was mentioned prior as your two great enemies, two tools of destruction. Okay? Everyone on earth has the ability and opportunity and obligation of keeping their torch lit. Fire is a powerful element, so powerful that if hot enough, it can melt steel. The steel from the chains that keep us restrained as slaves from achieving our goals, agendas, and destinies are religion and churches. The real symbol of evil that desires to control and manipulate mankind to their benefit, leaving billions of the population confused, ignorant, and dependent. And then last, when a man or woman is truly independent, a belief in his or herself is all that is needed. So what's needed? A belief in him or herself. Okay? Now again, Mark Simon Alvarez specifically in this book is attacking, let me not use that word, he's addressing, very aggressively through a Luciferian perspective, religion. Right? So we have to make that clear. It's obvious. But there's some good points in there that we must consider, right? There's some good concepts in there that we must look at in its entirety because it's going to help our understanding and perspective. All right. So what I'm going to finish with, let's go up through the chit chat. I'm going to go in order. I'll take some of your questions and some comments. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go through every comment. It's going to be too time consuming. I'm more so going to look for questions. All right. So again, if I didn't greet you when I first came on, infernal blessings. Thank everybody for tuning in. Again, encourage you guys check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. I encourage you to join Tier 3. That gives you access to our 3 private monthly classes I do, in addition to the monthly ritual. So I want you guys definitely check that out. Patreon.com/Baniti, Baniti. Again, the journey, 5th annual journey of the Black Adept Conference. People are signing up. That is open for full registration to sign up. It's approaching quick. We're about five weeks or so out, a little bit over 5 weeks out. That's right around the corner before you know it. That'll take place October 27th to the 30th. All the information is going on the bottom of the screen at the ticket. So I just want to put that out there. Don't forget. All right. Let me look for questions, and I'll read some comments that might be relevant to what we're talking about. Gingy says that primordial cast is any of the conference available for Patreon tiers? If so, oh, okay, yeah, I see. Then you typed an answer. No, the Patreon has nothing to do with the conference. It's a separate entity by itself. Anybody can attend the conference virtually, but no, it doesn't have anything to do with Patreon. It's a annual event that I've been doing every year. This will be the 5th year, obviously. That's why, hence it's called the 5th annual Journey of the Black Adept Conference. It's an event I do once a year. It's a 4-day event where we get together because obviously there's not a lot of circles on this path where we can get together as a family and a group and fellowship. And as I've talked about, and as I keep putting out there, it's a 4-day event of rituals, workshops, classes, and some fun too. We go out, we socialize, we eat, we hang out, we dance, we have fun, and all that good shit. So it's our annual get together. But there is a significance of why I do it. There is a science behind it. It's always at that last month of October, close to the Shabbat, or what some call Halloween. It's the beginning point of the cycles of secular time, where we go into what one calls on the occult darkness to regenerate, or what some call the winter solstice, which is the reason I've explained multiple times in previous videos why I shut down from pretty much Thanksgiving to New Year's Day, right? Obviously, not just because of the holidays. One, yes, that's part of it, but that is the highest time of darkness and secular time. That's when we're supposed to be recharging. So the conference is the last great major event before we enter that cycle every year. And for those that have been participating, you understand and you reap the benefits. And we usually focus on two very important, powerful ritual workings to finish out the year. Last year it was Tiamat. We did a ritual for Tiamat down at the beach where people got in the water, literally. Part of the ritual was connecting with the waters of the great mother Tiamat. Yes, some people were catching spirits and the Holy Ghost and all that shit. So it's a lot of intense work. The first night on Friday, it was a ritual invoking the dark gods and goddesses of the occult. I'm not going to get into the details of it. So it's two very impactful rituals for that weekend that we carry out together as a group that kind of finish off the season and get us ready to recharge and rejuvenate in that darkness. And then we emerge, obviously, as the new year turns over, approaching with those who call the spring equinox, right? The equinoxes have a whole different significance to us on this path than it does to others. Okay, let's see what else we got. All right, looking for questions. I appreciate that testimony there from Jenny. Testimony for Baniti's Patreon. There's a lot of info and knowledge. Very much worth it. Yeah, as I said before, and I don't say it out of arrogance. I say it out of confidence. There's a lot of content on there. And I don't think you're going to get that amount of content for that price and for the amount that's on there. You know, unfortunately, we got some cheap ass people. You get people that bitch and moan and complain about certain things. But they'll go spend tons of money on some garbage. They have no problem, spending $1,000 on an iPhone, but they won't invest in themselves a couple of dollars a month. It's pretty sad, but that's the society we live in. I laugh. Anybody, please never email me complaining about prices. You're going to get your feelings hurt. I don't put up with it. Okay. Everything I do is reasonably priced. I don't even entertain the thought of addressing or negotiating it. It's ridiculous because these are the same people, like I said, will have no problem going to spend $200 on a pair of shoes or sneakers, have no problem spending money on a new iPhone or whatever gadget, but want to sit here and nickel and dime you. And though I've never had that problem, I'm just putting it out there. But in the past, I've heard stories in other areas. They will nickel and dime you. I don't put up with that. Sorry. So don't waste your time. But check it out. What else we got? Okay, yeah. So Serpent Headed Mass, he responded earlier to what I was talking about, the Kiss concert. Yeah, man. Great time. Fun stuff. Jenny says, I saw a Kiss with Cheap Trick. Yeah, man. Opening in the 70s. Great. That's a good double bill, man. That's a really good double bill. Yeah, man. If you ever get, like I said earlier, I know we're going back to some earlier comments around that time, but like I said earlier, man, don't pass up the opportunity. And the thing with Kiss, this is their end of the road tour. This is their last tour. That's it. They're finally done. That's what they say anyway. A lot of these groups, they say they're done and then they come out of the woodworks. But this is supposed to be their final tour. And they're calling it the end of the road final tour, which more than likely will end up the last show in Madison Square Garden in New York, because that's where they're from. But who knows? But if you can get the opportunity to see a band, you may go, man. If it's a band that you like, go. I mean, I was blown away, man. And shit. And seeing them, I don't even remember the first time I saw them. So long ago. I was so young, so small. But this time I really enjoyed it. It was like I never saw them before. I'm going to be honest. Hold on one sec. But yeah, again, if you get the opportunity to see a band you love, go see it, man. It was a great time, man. This was probably, man, like I said, I think I sat down once, maybe twice for just a brief minute. I mean, I literally stood through the whole entire show. That's how good the show was. Yeah, the God of Thunder with Cher. This shit was awesome, man. Yeah, Gene Simmons segue into the God of Thunder is off the chain, man. If you've never seen it, you can pull it up on YouTube. He's added a little bit to it, but man, it's amazing. And again, I was blown away by how well they sounded live. You know, just incredible. All right, what else we got? This was earlier from Chuggington 808. Has anyone else noticed that wide receiver for the Detroit Lions, first name Amon-Ra, balling out this year? That energy is real. No, I haven't noticed, to be honest with you. Got to check that out. All right, what else we got? Tall and Thin 123 says, I've been watching some of your old streaming videos. Lots of good stuff there. Yeah, and some of my old videos going back a few years, I kind of, when I first came on YouTube, I didn't want to go right into a lot of the hardcore stuff. Though there's a lot of cult overtones to it. I kind of started with more neutral topics, though you'll see stuff on, Santa Muerte, you'll see stuff on the Cult Left Hand Path, but I had to gradually build it up because I didn't really want to start right out the gate with that. But you'll see after a few months or going into after the first year, it shifts. And I'll still visit some of those topics. Like I did a video years ago, which everybody was talking about a few months ago, this the hydrogen CERN. Everybody was back on that shit. And I did a video on that years ago. That's probably one of the most watched videos I have on the page. I think that was back in I'm going to say 2014 maybe or 13, somewhere like I don't know, somewhere around. It was one of the first ones though. But anyway. All right. Gerald Courier says, OMG, your best bro. I love your approach. I'm telling it like it is. I will go on the left hand path song. Well, good to see you here, Gerald. And good that we could help. All right, what else we got? Vision TG, what's going on, bro? Been a minute. Good to see you here. Confirmed Cultist says, I really needed to hear this. This was earlier. Thank you. All right, what else we got? All right, so this is a good comment from something we were talking about earlier. I personally feel like I've manifested lots. This is from Tall and Thin 123. Lots of good for myself because I look back at where I was many years ago and compare it to where I am now. Big leaps and changes. That's how you gauge results. That's why I was saying earlier, look, man, if you've been on this path and you can't look back a year, 2, 3, 4 years ago, whatever, and if you don't see no change as Tall and Thin is describing there, that's a problem, people. It's a serious problem, okay? Hold on 1 second. Hold on. What did I do here? Yeah. So you have to see that results because that when I was talking about earlier, if you've been doing something for an extended period of time and you're not seeing the results, that's time to start making some changes. But when you can see those results, as Tall, Thin 123 described, that's a good thing. Again, Zone 9, the other side, I know this was earlier, but let me put it up again. This is the book, The Enlightened Luciferian.
by Mark Simon Alvarez. There's 3 parts to this, I believe. I have all of them. This is book 1. He's got 3 parts to that book. He put out 3 different versions, not versions, volumes. They're all different though. They're not the same. And he had, again, as I said earlier in the beginning, he has his viewpoint of how he approaches Luciferian practice. And this is why I said, do your research. You should read all different things. You should, whether you agree with you, there's going to be things you're vibing with and not, but just so you can have those different perspectives and understandings, right? Okay, what else is it? Yeah, it's a very inexpensive book. I've had it for a while, so I can't remember. Man, maybe it was like $8 or something like that, $7, I think. It's really cheap. All right, what else we got? Serpent-Headed Mask says, been doing a lot of change lately, a lot of challenges. It's uncomfortable, but it must be done. And that's the key. It must be done. And change is not all the time, but change a lot is going to be very uncomfortable. It's going to be challenging because there's usually obstacles you have to overcome in those changes, right? And in the long run, I'm sure you're going to be better off. So keep plugging at it. Hopefully we get you back soon on Patreon. I know you told me you're stepping away to handle a lot of that. Do your thing. And then I know some people have asked for you, brother, on the Patreon. I just told them that you had to step away. We're handling some personal things. But do what you got to do, man. You got to get your shit in order. What's up, buddy? What you got there? What is this? Jenny says, I've noticed that zombie-looking people in the conscious community, yeah. As creators on YouTube and Insta, too, I can put my finger on what exactly it is, but it's usually in 6 months something goes down. I'm noticing that in a lot of circles. I'm telling you, it's crazy. It's man, it's almost... Excuse me. I'm not saying it's a good thing and it's not something that I look for because I don't. It's not like I intentionally go out of my way to look for it. You just can't help but notice it. To me, I take it as a sign of the times, as confirmation of the days and times that we're living in. And to me, it's a message from the spirits communicating to me, who's aware of what's going on and who's not, And unfortunately, that's one of the gifts that can be a curse that come with this territory in a sense, but it is what it is. Yeah, the love and lighters, love and light, peace and love, all that shit. This was a question earlier from Multiverse Speaks. Do you feel the overuse of malefic chaos, conflict magic creates damage and or mental health issues? All right, let me answer that part first. If it's abused, yes, it can, most definitely. Overuse is going to depend on, it has to fit in the category that a person is just using it for any and everything. And sometimes when they're using it just for out of personal greed and for just, motives that maybe not be justified, where the mental health issues and damage come from, when you're using it for very personal and greedy issues, where people fail to realize there's something that always has to be given in return, that there's nothing free, even in the spiritual world. In order to get something, you must give something. And sometimes because a person is requesting so much, a lot of their energy is sucked out of them and taken from them, and they don't realize the damage they've done to themselves until after the fact, when something like you described in the first part of your question, mental health issues can definitely kick in. People can start going a little batty, a little crazy. They can become a magnet for walking spirits. Because remember, if you understand how the spirits work, if you understand spirit possession, you must understand they enter in through the crown, right? And as I've said many times before, depending upon your aura and the vibrational light frequency it gives off, it determines when you're in a negative, depressed state of mind, that is a ripe time for spirits or walk-ins to enter you.
And they can determine that mood or vibration or frequency by the light you're giving off via your aura, right? That's where I'm trying to explain in detail where the damage can start. So most definitely the overuse of it is real if those circumstances and situations I just described apply, right? So we definitely need to be aware of that. The second part of your question, and further path away from the balance of light and dark and the Lucifer. Yeah, yes, it can definitely remove you further away, because remember, when we talk about Luciferian energy, that's a manifestation of harmony between light and darkness. So when one goes too dark, just like we talk about being too light and fluffy and light and love and being under those systems of dogma and illusions cause people to just be in a state of ignorance, you can go to the point of that darker side or darker energy and get chewed up and spitting out. So most definitely that stuff can happen. That stuff can happen. And we need to be aware of it. Good comment earlier from Queen Kadesh. We are now in the dark half of the year. There is much wisdom / light we can tap into now. And that's true. And that's how we look at these seasons or the equinoxes. Goddamn. Yeah, the equinoxes. I'm sorry. That's how we perceive them on this path. Great seasons of change. They all represent different things. And as Queen Kadesh says, as now we're going into the, I believe it just passed on the 21st, the fall solstice, which is the beginning stages to the approach in December of what one calls the winter solstice, not the equinoxes. I meant solstices. Excuse me. We're approaching that great point of darkness, and we go into that darkness to regenerate and then come out and resurrect as a much perfected being. So yes, we are approaching that dark half of the year. All right. Trident 72 is correct. Our brain and our heart remain in darkness our entire lives. That's true. And it's funny you mentioned the brain and the heart, the two key vital parts of the body that are responsible for the manifestation of that divine intellect, and how not coincidental it's encoded in that neuromelanin at all times, like many other organs in the body, but especially that pure darkness. That's a good point. Good point. This was earlier from Multiverse Speaks. Baniti studies something that the darkness was actually a dark purple from all the colors, hence the purple light, Michael / Lucifer. But I dreamed of being in a black body of water while breathing. Now, I've heard that concept. Now, I know with the black flame, it's funny because some will say that the black flame, when studying that concept in the occult of the left-hand path, it's actually a dark purple, amber type of color or light. Now, I know in certain circles you use in the parentheses there. I'm not sure from what system, spirituality, or you were coming from. I do know people have that Michael / Lucifer correlation, right? Now, again, the last part that you typed in there, but I dreamed of being in a black body of water while breathing. That can mean a multitude of things, being in the abyss, emerging from that chaos or watery abyss. But obviously there can be a multitude of meanings to that, right? So yeah, there is a connection with that purple and black, with the black flame. What else we got? Yeah, I'm sure this was from Zone 9, the other side. I remember they did that when I joined the Elks. Yeah. It's funny you bring up orders like the Elks. It is funny. Something I alluded to briefly. I remember also years ago, just because I wanted to gain the experience of it, something I don't really talk about a lot. I actually went through the four degrees of the Knights of Columbus. Went all the way up to Grand Knight. And basically the founder of the Knights of Columbus, a priest named Father Michael McGivney, he was influenced by Masonry. because the first 3 degrees of the Knights of Columbus are very similar to the first 3 degrees of Masonry in the Blue House. Other fraternal orders like the Elks and things of that and all these other, yes, they have a lot of Masonic influence on them, and I know the Elks have heard stories too. So yeah, there's an initiatic aspect to that. So it's funny you bring it up. I have heard that. Gerald curses. Oh, yeah, I try to have a little fun with it, Gerald, when I'm teaching. I try not to be boring and bland. And again, I want anybody, I know some, especially if you might be a Christian, you're here for the first time. No pun intended. Just having a little fun, but we got to tell it like it is, right? So I try my best to relay it as that. Look, I myself, like I say, I got, I deal with people from all walks of life. I got good friends that are Christians. I'm talking about bona fide, sanctified, saved, go to church every Sunday Christians, and we have some funny ass conversations. To each his own, but we're all on our own spiritual path, a journey, and we got to tell it like it is. Unfortunately, well, no, that's wrong. Not unfortunately, we have to tell it like it is. Fortunately, okay. Okay, see, Multiverse Speaks. I see it. Thank you for the earlier donation. I see it here. I believe I'm knocking at the door, but where would you start to embrace or connect to the darker Lucifers? Received a telepathic message to prostrate, bow down just last week. All right, now I would say this. Again, that could be your personal message or connection. I've said before, though, we shouldn't bow down to anything or nothing or no one, because we are God or goddess. I'm not talking about a gesture like they do in certain cultures where it's a bow of respect. But as far as fully prostrating and bowing down, that would be surrendering your divinity to a certain extent. Now, I'm not telling you not to. I'm not telling you to. I am telling you to consider both aspects. Right? So this could be your personal connection. I'd be clear when you say telepathic, right? Spirits or many spirits have the ability to send voices and project them to the subconscious mind. I would just say be sure and clear of what you're communicating with. Now, if you're sure and clear and you know that, then that decision is on you, right? And to the first part of your question, there's not a time frame you can say, if you're at the door, just continue on the path to your journey. There's not a specific time. You'll know when you fully make the connection or embrace it. It's just, you'll know it. It's a feeling. It'll confirm itself for you. There's no really time frame you could put on that. A lot of that is very dependent on the work you're doing and how strong you've solidified that connection. So those are kind of all the things you just need to take into account and just continue the process in your journey. All right. What else we got? Yeah, I'm sure there's a Bible somewhere. I got 5 or 6 different Bibles. I got different translations because I do research. I got an Oxford annotated Bible. I got the New American Bible, which is the Catholic Church's translation. I got the Apocrypha in that. I've got a New Revised King James Version of same thing with the Quran. I probably got several translations of the Quran because I do a lot of research in regards to those areas. All right. Look, people don't get it twisted. What people don't realize, we're well-rounded teachers and students and scholars on this path. Don't get it twisted. It is what people fail to realize. We could hold conversations in any circles of spirituality, whether it's religion, the occult left-hand path, traditional spirituality such as African spirituality, whatever, Kemetic or ancient Egyptian studies, you name it. We're well-rounded in all those areas of knowledge because when you're an occultist, you're very open-minded. You're not succumbing to one particular path, or subscribing to one particular path. right? That's the beauty. You can navigate through all of these systems and and master them, that's what sets us apart from a lot of other paths, right? Yes, in the Lost Book of Enki, and even Zechariah Stitchin talks about it. There are some under the belief that the Old Testament God was in Leo, right? And the reason why you see these battle, where you see when it talks about in plural in that Old Testament, this battle between gods, where you see them being referred to as Elohim, the sons of God. Some say that's even that story I read in Job. Some say you're reading the Babylonian story between the war of the two brothers in Leo and Enki. There's that concept out there, right? And Leo being the god of the Bible and Enki being this serpent figure. And there's a lot of things you can synchronize with that. I would tell people listening, rather than to get in a basic, really drawn out, long fuckery debate, you take it with a grain of salt and decipher it for how you need it to work for you. I believe when it comes to synchronizing things like with stuff like that, yes, if you look hard enough, you'll see it. It's there, right? And then it's personally on the individual how they want to take that and proceed with it. Where it gets a little, kind of touchy-feely and fucked up is where people want to start getting into literal debates over this stuff. But we can definitely see the correlation for sure. I agree with that. Yeah, Jenny said earlier, to pit human against human, kind of like Hegelian dialectic, right? And that's true, but that's basically what this God of the Bible did, man. There's just a lot of tricks and games and just slick shit. And like when you really look at it as a whole, the question is why? What's the need for it? Doesn't make sense. Like, what's the need for this foolishness, right? It's crazy. Yeah, Trident, God knows all, but he can't, he's walking in the cool day in the garden, and he doesn't know where two beings that he created, and they're the only two beings alive on the planet at that time, according to religious theology, right? But he doesn't know where they're at. Stupidity. Just confirms more the stupidity to that story. What else we got? Yeah, Jen, they try to blame it on the lady all the time. It's always the woman. Yeah. What else we got? It just says Amber Heard's fault. They still talking about that shit on the news? I thought that shit was over. Creative soul. Not sure from what concept you're coming from with the eighth sphere, right? I've read a couple of different things on that. So rather than just ramble on, if you could type later down in the chat, are you coming from a specific piece of information in a book that you read or from a specific teacher or author? That would kind of probably narrow down the question a little more rather than me ramble on. So if you're asking that from something you read, reference what you read now, then I can elaborate a little more on it. All right, what else we got? Trying to set it to B. Yo, I got to give you a call, brother Taj. I keep saying I'm busy. We got to link up, get some shit straight, man. How about the Kabbalistic teaching that God removed himself from a space in the darkness and poured himself into it as creation? Again, that's just more human foolishness trying to cover up what they don't understand. That's the shit that I'm talking about. That sounds heavy. Yes, I've heard that before. Sounds heavy. It's a bunch of mumbo jumbo when the reality is just say you don't know. You can't confirm that. Why I keep bringing those points up? Because what I'm trying to get people to see, the reality is the only thing that is real in existence is you. And anything beyond that existence and what you've accepted as a reality into that existence doesn't exist. That's my whole point. That's why I keep harping on that. So you know you're real. You know, if as far back as you can trace your genealogy, whether it's to your grandparents, great-grandparents, etc., that's real. But outside of what you can comprehend, it has no reality or realness to you. It doesn't become real till you raise yourself up to the realization of that reality, and then you allow that in your universe. So I always use this analogy for people to see that, so people don't get confused, right? At some point, we all grew up, for the most part, us who were raised here in the Western world, right? That were raised up or influenced by religion to some degree, whether it was strict or loose or whatever. At some point, we all came across, whether it was a parent, a priest, a pastor, or whatever, at some point, somebody brought to our attention the consciousness and awareness of God. So somebody sat down and told us there was a God, this and that. And then from that point on, however, to what level or degree we were exposed, that was our understanding of what they were calling God, right? Now, the question is, did God exist before whatever individual brought to your attention that there was a God? And people always fuck the answer up to this question. And the answer is yes and no. You say, well, how can it be both? Really simple. No, God didn't exist to you. It wasn't real to you until at that moment somebody introduced this God concept. That's when it became real. It didn't exist until, like I said earlier, you embraced it and accepted it as a reality. And then when you take it a step further back, even before you had any awareness or consciousness of what God was, right, is confirmation that it goes even deeper than this whole question of did God exist. The only thing that mattered was you existed, and everything that proceeded from your mind and created your universes and created your reality or realms of reality, right, is the only thing that matters to you. And you were the ruling God or goddess over that universe. So that shit, that's irrelevant. Doesn't really matter at this point. But I'm using it as an analogy to get people to see the foolishness they must come out from under, right? But I've heard that concept trying to, it's just hilarious. Nihilistic Smile says, some rabbis said Hebrew cannot even be translated. The concepts just don't even translate. Most languages, as Taja said, can't, like even Spanish, there's words in English that you can't even find that would be compatible. So a lot of those languages, and especially an old Semitic language like Hebrew, is going to get lost in translation, right? Unfortunately, right? Excuse me, I'm sorry, people. But I have heard Hebrew or Jewish rabbis say that the complexity of it. But again, it doesn't just apply to the Hebrew. That's across the board, especially again when transition it into English, right? There's a good point from Jenny. Subservient to the Catholic, meaning monotheism, monotheistic religions. Subservient to the Catholic Church of all things, Judaism and Muslim faith, they all have good things, but they demand control, total slavery for their system. Yeah, and they do. Multiverse Speaks said, I'm so thankful you're reading this, Beniti. Never thought about that. What if Lucifer chose to leave heaven? That's a thought we always had. Free will and his exit from heaven was an exemplification of that, because that's your story. Everybody that made the conscious decision to come on this path of the occult left-hand path, you became like Lucifer did in that story. You rebelled and you made the decision to be a nonconformist and stand on your own. But you also embraced that you too would be casted out like Lucifer. That's why I titled the video, Behold, Lucifer from the East. Okay? That's why I titled it that. Okay? So, yeah. What else we got? This was from Nihilistic Smile. Also, there's a book. I got to look for that. Never heard of it. Bicameral Mind or something scholarly explaining how ancient humans were literally psychotic children that don't have the type of mind we have today. I got to check that out. Excuse me. Yeah, man, when they be catching spirits, shama lama lama ding dong, mama say, mama san, mama kusan, all that shit. I don't even know what the fuck they saying. Hamada hamada. That's right. Yeah, this is a classic. This comment here from Jin Jenny. This is a classic Christian. I've heard this a bunch of times. That they try to get you to buy, to accept the fact if you are in a bad situation, say really struggling financially, in a bad place, they come up with this type of foolishness to almost get you to accept your circumstances, which is pretty fucked up, right? Jin Jenny says, a lot of Christians tell you when you suffer, you will be rewarded, and people wait their whole lives patiently to get their issue, right? Come on. That, again, gives somebody the false sense of an illusion. There's that broke pie in the sky mentality. I could be unsuccessful here, pissed broke, but there's some great reward waiting for me up in heaven. Nah, I'm not buying that shit no more. I'm not buying it. Yeah, that catching the Holy Ghost, that's some funny ass shit. All right, what else we got? Yes, it is a religious conspiracy. Yeah, we had a little church up in here earlier. What else we got? Well, hopefully, confirm cultists. Hopefully, the live stream is messing with the head in a good way. To get us to think, man, we got to come out of these systems of oppression, man, for ourselves, not for nobody else. I want to make this clear. This journey is for you. The only thing you got, or the only person you need to prove something to, is yourself. That's what we do is different. We're not on a mission to save the whole world. We're not interested in going out there and trying to convert people to this path. I've always said for years, I believe this has to be in your DNA in order to be on this path. I don't think it's not like a lesser religion where you can convert people to this path. This is not that type of path. I believe this has to be in you have to have DNA makeup to be on this path. I really do. And that's the goal, is to put these things out there, to build that dialogue, right? All right. What else we got? Yeah. Yeah, it'll do it to you. That plate will come around 3 or 4 times. They got Pastor Pimp got to get gas in that Cadillac. Got to get that new Rolex. Yeah, Jenny, you're on Patreon. So you want to know the occult roots of the Christ? Definitely come to that esoterical occult Bible study class. Check those out if you haven't, the ones that are archived, and we're doing a new one next month. That'll give you the full breakdown. We're going hard on those classes, man. Really break it down in there. All right. All right. This thing skipped a little bit on me. All right, so this Jay the Danger says, in my dreams, I keep getting the images of hills, rocks, mountains. What does that mean? That usually is a telltale sign you're getting ready to go through some challenges, right? And the subconscious mind is communicating it through you. I'd get myself ready and embraced for dealing with some challenges and obstacles that unfortunately, when you see it like that, they just come kind of out of the blue. Some you might already see in front of you, and you might be well aware. Well, the spirit is trying to tell you there's going to be some mountains, hills, and rocks that you're going to have to climb. Right now, even if the imagery is beautiful,
is trying to tell you once you climb those mountains, rocks, and hills, you'll see what's in store for you, right? Tall and Thin 123 says, I just checked my Baphomet statue and it has all the correct symbolisms as you described. It also has wings. And you know, people associate wings with angels. Yes, it's all there. Everything is there. The Baphomet represents totality, all those things that we discussed earlier, of course. And that's why it is one of the most popular and most used symbols in the occult, right? And that's why, you know, when we have that backdrop or some form of Baphomet on our altar, it's supposed to connect us to all those aspects of Baphomet that we talked about earlier. It's a very powerful symbol. Oh, to not prostrate. Okay, I got you. I missed that. My bad. That's good. I got you. To Multiverse Speaks. I didn't see that part. My oversight. I'm sorry. Gingy says, I'm looking for a Bible that has comparisons like a scholarly Bible with Latin and English Psalms. There's so many Bibles out there, it's overwhelming. Now, I don't know one offhand that has the Latin in there. I'm sure they exist, but I can tell you there's one that has everything you're looking for minus the Latin, would be that Oxford Annotated Bible. Check that out. It's a really good Bible, especially if you're more interested, like I am, on the research and study side of things. That's why I say that. That is a great Bible. All right. Serpent Hidden Mask. Salute, brother. I appreciate you saying that, brother. I'll get back on the Patreon soon. Might need to have a consultation or something with you. Not sure where I left off on shadow work class. Need to get back. Whenever you're ready, brother, do your thing. Do your thing. We'll get it. Janelle Longoria says, do you think we as a society would just be better off without spiritual mindedness? Well, no, because it depends on your definition of spiritual mindedness and what spirituality is. Do I think we would be better off with without some forms of things that people are calling it that? Yes, because there's some things that are very corrupt and toxic. So yes, I think we need to have our own spiritual mindedness, right? We call that, for an example, the isolated consciousness of Set, where we developed what that mindness is, or what we're mindful and aware of, right? Or what's proceeding from that mind. As long as it's not a nonconformist mind or way of thinking that's in alignment with all of these things that we've been talking about that are systems of oppression and indoctrination, all of those things and the ones that they are labeling as spiritual, yes, we need to completely rid ourselves of those things. And we're definitely going to be better off without of it. But we all need to have our own personal spiritual mindedness that's in alignment with being on this path as a spiritual sovereign. So most definitely. Creative Soul replied, the eighth spear. I learned about this via a YouTube channel, Gigi Young, and she says that this is a plane that separates the earth plane from Christ consciousness. She explains it in detail. Yeah. All right. So now that I know the perspective you're coming from, I'm not familiar with, that person you mentioned and where you saw it on the YouTube. Yeah, there are a lot of quote unquote people who we would classify in alignment with New Age or more New Age philosophies. It's a theory. I don't know how we can 100% validate it. I do get the concept and what it's trying to explain. When you use the term separate the earth plane from Christ consciousness, there's a multitude of ways to look at that, right? We know earth, even in a lot of spiritual systems, this is one of the lesser realms, right? It's a realm of mortality. So in that sense, it will always fall in alignment with what it says there, right? Or what you typed in. I'm not saying it's wrong.
I still think it's going to be a matter of perspective and how people perceive it, because there's some that could be completely in alignment and agreement with that, and there's some that might have a different approach on it. I'm going to say this: I could see in it some level of validity. Do I embrace or accept that as a whole? No, I don't. I don't think it's quite like that, but I do kind of get the direction that she's going in to try to explain it. I get it. All right. So then you have down here, to elaborate more, the eighth sphere is where demonic spirits exist and are very real beings on this plane. The reason why I don't buy into the separation theory, as I've said many times before, I do believe there are different realms or planes, right? And as I said before, but they're all interwoven around you. So I don't look at it as a separation. It's more of a meshing or emerging from one to the other, right? When you understand that scientific concept that the spiritual realms are interwoven, or the spiritual planes are interwoven around you, right? And that's why I always make reference to like the Matrix movies, how they were showing you like you could penetrate or stick your finger or your hand through the wall of the Matrix, right? I believe that's what I mean with these, what they're calling, for lack of a better word, spiritual realms. They're all interwoven around you. So that's why I was saying earlier, I don't buy into the separation theory, because everything in existence cannot have any separation. It can create the illusion it does, and it could be perceived like that, but it negates the metaphysical and the quantum aspect that all things are connected. So even though we may be perceiving it and it manifests with some form of individual separateness, it's all connected. It's all one living entity, right? But I understand the point. Confirmed Cultist says, yes, it's a very good thing. This is the first live stream of yours that I joined. I just had a feeling that you discussed something important that I needed to hear. So glad I listened to that feeling. I'm glad was able to be of some help for this evening. Dr. Vine, better late than never. Better late than never. It's all right, man. All good. It's all good. All right, what else we got? Yeah, we all have a lot to learn, Confirmed Cultist. The path of enlightenment is definitely a beautiful experience. I'm so excited to see exactly where this path will lead me. It's a great journey. It's a never-ending journey. There's something always new, adventurous, and exciting. That's why we're what separates us. We get up every day, and there's always this possibility of experiencing something new and exciting. We don't do the same redundant shit all the time, like a lot of other systems do. It's very repetitive. It's very redundant, but not for good reasons. Repetitiveness and repetition can be good if there's a particular benefit behind it that's going to serve you to a certain degree and benefit you, but it could be a bad thing too, right? So yeah, there's a lot to that original comment. There's a lot to learn, and as long as you're always willing to learn, there will always be opportunities for growth. It's that simple. It's the motherfuckers that think they know everything. You can't talk to them. You can't tell them shit. They know everything. So when you come across a know-it-all, well, if you know everything, what you wasting your time talking to me for? You know everything, right? You don't need to talk to me because you know everything. All right. What else? I think we getting to the end of the road here. Are we? Is we? Sherry King. The back? No, it's not. That's all right. Off-top question. I use a platform, StreamYard. A lot of people on YouTube are using it. They're using either this StreamYard, or they're using Restream. I find StreamYard has a better option. So when you're using their platform, which is basically you sign up for it, you go to their website, StreamYard.com, you pick a plan. The free plan, I will tell you, this sucks, because when you live stream, it's very slow speed. So I was on the free plan for a while, but you can't do a background like this. Go to the basic plan. So basically, it's on the platform has the ability. So like when you log in, you go into your settings, and then you can upload whatever picture or image you have on your computer saved gives you the option to upload it as a background. So it's real simple shit. You'll find everybody that you see, most people I noticed or have seen in the last year or two, it's become real big. A lot of people are using StreamYard. I think StreamYard and Restream, but I think StreamYard has better options. They pretty much operate and work the same. I went to it because, as I said in the beginning, I can stream on all three platforms simultaneously. So as we're sitting here, not only are we live on YouTube, we're live on Facebook, and we're live on Instagram. So it gives you the ability to stream to through multiple platforms, and then it has cool features. That's it. It's that simple. You just go to your settings. Now, you could even do it if you have, but to me, it was just too much nonsense. Even if you just have a regular YouTube channel, there's a software, I forgot the name of the company, that you can upload for backgrounds. But I didn't want to bother with it. It was a hassle. All right. What else we got? I think we good. All right, people. I'm gonna shut this down just well, that's not shit, not early. Damn, we've been on for almost 3 hours. Usually I go 4 hours. I don't see any other questions, but long story short, in closing, again, the book was in The Enlightened Luciferian by Simon Mark Alvarez. There's three volumes of it. This is volume 1, the first one. Highly encourage you guys to get it. There's a lot of good stuff in there. He's got some other books out. I can't think of the names of them right now outside of this one. I'm drawing a blank. But check it out. It's a good book because remember, this is a path of self-mastery. And I had a conversation earlier today. One of the students in the mentorship program had reached out to me. We had to discuss something that they were studying. And a lot of good points came up in that conversation. And one of the things we were talking about was reading, researching, and studying, right? It's very important. We're critical thinkers. We analyze everything. And, I want to encourage you guys, when you are reading, don't just read. Make sure you're studying. So if you're reading something, and I was telling this student this today earlier, when you're reading something, this happens to a lot of us. We're reading and something maybe from another source or another book comes into our mind. Stop. If you have that book on handy, grab it, do the comparisons, et cetera, et cetera. That's how you study and break things down, right? We're researchers in the sense that we're going to research things. We're going to question things. We're going to analyze things so we can get to the root and the bottom of things so we can get an understanding. I'm not, and neither should any of us accept anything anybody tells us. You shouldn't even just accept anything I tell you. And I know you guys don't, but you're supposed to check into these things, because once you validate them for yourselves, that's when it becomes real truth. Real truth is not just, you could accept anything as being truth. That doesn't make it truth. When it becomes real truth, it's you've experienced it and you've raised yourself up to the reality of it. Now, that changes the whole game. It's real truth to you. You understand what I'm saying? So I encourage you guys, be diligent studiers. Don't just be readers. We have a lot of book readers out here, people that read books and regurgitate information. You want to be studiers. When you're not just reading, you should be studying. Like, you got to be in this all day. This is a lifestyle, man. This is 24/7, 7 days a week. This is a way of living. This isn't just, I do this when it's convenient for me, right? When this becomes a part of you, that's when your whole life literally starts to change right in front of you. All right. So I encourage you guys, do your reading, do your studying. Again, check out the Patreon page, patreon.com/Baniti. And like I said in the beginning of the video, I don't really post when I'm going to come on here, but I could always tell you when I do. It's either usually a Thursday or a Friday. So just be aware. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like, and make sure you hit all the notification bells. When you hit that drop down on the notification bell, make sure you check all notifications. Because I always get people say, "Oh man, I didn't see the live." Sometimes it's YouTube. Sometimes just be shit beyond our control. But just make sure you do your due diligence in that area. If you're checked in that area, then usually you'll get a notification when I do go on. This way you guys can tune in. But I also do believe YouTube be fucking with the algorithms. I'm sorry. I know because I've seen it. I've seen views be taken away. Not that it's a big deal to me, but because it's not like I do this on the side, but I have seen it, and it's more part of all that system of control, unfortunately, that's going around, but it is what it is. But other than that, I appreciate everybody for tuning in. I'll try to get back on here probably sometime next week, if permitted. If not, hey, we'll be on. All right. Fraternal blessings to all, and we'll talk soon. All right. Peace out.